Good evening and welcome to the November 20th, 2023 meeting of the Town of Richmond Selectboard. I would just like to say as part of the welcome that I hope everybody has a pleasant Thanksgiving. And I'd just like to say I've been thinking a lot lately about all the things I'm grateful for. And, we've thanked a lot of people, a lot of times, our town employees, the town volunteers. I just like to say most of all, I'm thankful to be a member of this community that's so supportive and that helps each other. I was reminded of that recently when I heard that somebody wanted to come take a job here, more or less because specifically people were so welcoming here. Is there any other public comment anybody would like to make? Bart? Oh, okay. Okay. Additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda. I have a minor informational item regarding our FEMA loan, or our FEMA payment for the Thompson Road Culvert. Is there anything else anybody would like to add to the meeting?
Is this the Thompson Road Culvert?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll just throw it in because it's why not. On Halloween 2019. The large culvert of Thompson Road was washed out. The road was impassable, basically. We replaced it. FEMA agreed to pay us. And for 4 years, we've been chasing that check.
Well, it wasn't quite. So Pete jumped on it right away, replaced it, did a really good job. But when FEMA inspected it, they said this should actually be bigger based on the size of the water that came through here. So they encouraged us to do a mitigation program, which involved the hydrological study, as well as engineering to upsize that culvert. So that took some time. So we actually did the work 2 summers ago. So 22 is when we did the work. That project completed in the fall. We submitted all the expenses in January, and then it did take quite a while for review. We finally got sign off on that. Last week, they said, okay, you're all set to go. We'll send you the check for this project. We also finally completed all of our category Z, which is administrative time for this disaster. Now this goes back to the Halloween 2019 storm. So we'll get some money for that. And then we're going to get the state money. So when FEMA pays you out, there's a portion that comes from the state as well, but they don't pay that until everything's closed. So the state money should be about another $40,000. I'm waiting on finalizing
So the
that.
total between the two is?
Oh boy, the culvert's like 150 something, which we had accounted for in unassigned funds. So this sort of goes back to the budget. We had
Right.
accounted for that coming in this fiscal year. That's going to happen. And now our next update for the budget is, okay, how much of this additional state money is going to come in? Because we hadn't accounted for that yet in unassigned because we weren't really sure. So hopefully I can get a better read on that by the next budget meeting and we can include that. But yes, I'm excited that the Halloween storm from 4 years ago is finally, for all intents and purposes, done administratively.
I joked with Josh a couple days ago that we should get a birthday cake for it. Happy birthday, a 4-year-long saga. Okay, so that's just, I consider that good news because for years we've been, wondering if that money would ever come. Okay, our first item on the scheduled agenda is consideration of making an appointment to the Housing Committee. The Housing Committee has openings, and Matthew Parisi has submitted his application to be on the committee, and hopefully the select boards all have a chance to look at his resume. It's pretty impressive. Is Matthew with us tonight? Here in person or online? Okay. This is not one of our more controversial committees. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about this? Jeff?
I've attended several planning commission meetings of which Matthew has attended and participated in. I've found him very constructive, very knowledgeable, and very constructive. So I'm very supportive of this. So,
But, the Housing Committee has a pretty important mandate, but from time to time they've had a hard time having enough critical mass on the committee to get it going. And it sounds like Matthew would be a good jolt of energy.
So, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Jay, this is David. I move to approve Matthew Parisi to fill a vacant seat on the Housing Committee, which has a term expiring in 2024. Just confirming that is correct, expiring in 2020.
Yeah, we know there's currently 3 seats that are vacant and they each expire in 24, next year. So he would be up for reappointment in that seat, which would be next spring.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sander and seconded by Jeff.
Sure, I'll second that.
I know somebody did. He did it. Okay, I apologize. You two just like twins. Okay, we have a motion from David Sander, a second by Lisa Miller to appoint Matt Parisi to fill a vacant seat on the Housing Committee to a term expiring in 2024. Being no further discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Ard, aye.
David, I.
Jeff, I.
Lisa, aye. And Jane, aye. Congratulations, Matthew, if you watch this later. Our second item on the agenda has to do with the town center. I'll give the 30,000 foot explanation. As many of you have heard, there are plans in place to redevelop this building, keeping on its existing footprint, but to drastically upgrade health and safety and heating and all manner of stuff. And Jeff Ford and his committee have done a great job in that regard. However, as we're reconfiguring,
Hi, Emily Mitchell. I am a Richmond resident and visual art.
as we're reconfiguring, one of the things we're juggling is space for all the nonprofits that currently use space here. Right now, we have Radiate Art Center in the basement. We have our community cares camp right on the other side of the screen, MMCTV, Richmond Senior Center, Richmond Historical Society, and everybody wants, with justification, to be under this roof. So we have right now some people here from to speak on behalf of Radiate on their wish to be part of the town center subsequent to the redevelopment. So would you guys like to come up and or run the video?
Well, whenever you're ready. Sorry, it started before I was ready for it to start.
Before we start, specific comments from Radiate folks, can we get a brief update from the committee, the town center building committee, like how they ended up here?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Mhm.
So the committee's been meeting for quite some time now. It's been 4 or 5 years. And we started when the school district vacated this space. And the select board at the time appointed this committee to evaluate what we should do with the town services and the town center and the vacant space that we had at the time. One of the first things that the committee did was establish a criteria for how to prioritize requests. 'Cause we had many, requests of how to use the vacant space. I think that criteria was included in the select board packet. Since then, we've gone through this entire process of visioning and getting public input. We hired an architect earlier this year. They went around and interviewed all of the occupants of the building, including town staff and all of the tenants that were in the building at the time, including Radiate, and asked what they would like and what they would need. We found out that the basement in particular, while we can develop this building, it's certainly in the floodplain. We experienced and our floodplain regulations do not allow us to use the basement for occupied space. We can use it for storage. We can't use it for occupied space. So applying that criteria to the remaining tenants, we couldn't figure a configuration that neatly contained all of the existing uses in the building. So Radiate is somewhat different than the other occupants of the building. It's program space as opposed to office space primarily. But that's not to say that it couldn't happen. The space that's most in flux is this floor, is the top floor. A decision does not need to be made at this time of exactly what tenants we have in the building, what uses we have in the building. What the committee was able to determine was that we can fit all of the town services in the building. We can include the post office. We can do this without adding an addition. to the building, which would be expensive and problematic because of lot coverage for our zoning regulations. Where the walls go and how this floor is divvied up is not a costly endeavor. You know, we could change things now or after we have a positive bond vote and go to construction drawings. What we needed enough information to give to the architects to be able to price out what it would cost for a bond. And that's the stage we're at right now. Radiate has been very explicit that they would like to have space in this building. The other tenants in the building, the Senior Center, the Historical Society, MMCTV,
And OCCC.
and our community care scan. They all remain flexible and willing to discuss alternative options. So the floor plans that are in public discussion right now do not need to be firm. The biggest problem for us this year has been trying to figure out what to do with the police, because our police situation is in flux. You know, what we determined is that we could fit a police department in this building, but not, you know, a fully fledged police department with a sally port is it's an area of the building where a police car can come in with somebody they want to detain in an enclosed space and then process that person. That doesn't fit easily in this building or on this lot because, you know, the first floor is up, you know, half a story. So, you know, it would be difficult to do that. So we haven't had processing, you know, detainee prisoner processing in this building for a number of years now. We do it off-site anyways. The current space for the police station is pretty small. We've only recently gotten a police chief that we can actually work with on to talk about design. Where we landed was doubling the size of the current space for the police department, but doing it up here. That doesn't necessarily have to be. That could change. But we needed something in order to work with.
So
Okay.
I have one other question, Jay. So in our packet is something called the proposed town center interim usage criteria.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
what you use?
That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
So I'll just observe, having been on this board at the time, that was designed as interim usage. Back pre-reconstruction at the time, we were deciding whether we were going to remodel or demo and rebuild.
Correct.
So just from a process viewpoint, those criteria, I think, were established, and they might be fine forever, but they were clearly established for a temporary or interim use.
Correct.
So I just, as a process question, we might want to review them or update them if we're
That would be
selecting future
Mhm.
tenants, paid or unpaid.
And, you know, I would suggest the time to do that is, you know, after a positive bond vote.
Okay.
Okay, but long story short, just to take the core relevant point out of Jeff's proposal is that the walls can be moved. We are not, if somebody says the police, we don't need a locker room, we don't need this. It's not something that requires $85,000 of engineering plans to do that.
No.
And so, it's kind of like Tetris at this point, if I'm not dating myself too much. My wife was playing that back in college. Do they still play it? I don't know. But we would have 5 nonprofits under this roof, along with all the other departmental services. And if we can make that work, we will. Emphasis on if.
Jay, my one comment is, it is somewhat arbitrary. There are many other nonprofits that serve our town, if we're gonna energize that question.
Right.
And I think that's why we would start with updating the criteria that for not an interim use, which was explicitly designed to be until we did something with the building. What do we want it to look like in the future? And I just think that's a process question that we haven't gone through. And to your point, it might happen
But that's something we could definitely look at putting on a future agenda, yeah.
I think, what's relevant about that piece, that criteria was that, town and governmental services were the top priority. If, no matter what we were gonna do with this building or this site, we were gonna do it for our town services first. And we had to determine how much space we needed for town services, which I think we've done a good job doing. So, that leaves remaining space. And it would be appropriate to revisit that and perhaps, open the door again to go revisit, who else might want it. There were other applicants at the time.
Okay, so what we'll be doing next is hearing from Radiate about their vision for what they'd like to do. So, Josh has a presentation that they've
Oh,
shared.
You want me to share the
You wanted-
presentation?
I didn't know if you wanted to introduce it
What would
before
you
we
like?
jump right into the video.
Well, I can, my name is Darcy Rankin and I am a Richmond resident. I'm also a volunteer at Radiate and have been on their board for several years before I became just a super volunteer. And I was delegated tonight to come and talk to you all. And I'm excited just to share with you a little bit about how we feel we integrate really well with the Richmond community. And I think that our concern after hearing some of this conversation is just that in the documents that have been published to the public right now, it pretty explicitly says these are nonprofits can be accommodated and Radiate cannot be accommodated. And so it sounds like maybe there's some willingness to entertain changes to that, which I think would be the first step that we would be looking towards garnering support. And I think after you hear my presentation, you're going to see why including us means having greater support for the bond folks, which I think is important. And I think all the work you've done, I think we can support that additionally with being included.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to give a little bit of background on Radiate, the art space, who we are and what we've done for the community since we've been around. And really just our motivation today is just to be considered as a tenant in the updates. So we are a nonprofit, 510C. We are a volunteer board of trustees. We're a community-based group. We provide arts for Richmond and our surrounding communities. And our mission has always been to provide a space that fosters social and community building interactions around the arts for everyone. So how are some of the ways we have done that in the past 5 years? We have play groups, after school classes, senior center art exercise groups, summer reading programs, connections with our community cares camp, summer art classes, over 50 free workshops in the last 5 years for every age group in our community, as well as birthday parties. We have been involved a lot in the community, including creating the Richmond Town banners, doing an annual art crawl that brings in over 50 artisans from our local community, painting the murals that have been on the town center. We have received many grants and funding for increased art opportunities, which we've brought into the community. We participated in open studio weekends, markets, open houses, the farmers market, basically all those things in the community we've been a part of. And not to take my word for it, I thought there are two kind of groups that it would be important to hear from as well. The first one is a community artist who has used our space.
Hi, my name is Emily Mitchell. I am a Richmond resident and visual artist. I have had the opportunities to participate in Radiate in a number of ways. I've taught classes in the space. I have shown my work.
Hold on a
as
second.
an artist.
Jay, you might know, there's a setting on Zoom to share
Oh, you're right.
computer audio. How do you know
Go
where
back
that
to,
is?
go back to
quickly?
Zoom before,
Yeah, let me stop sharing really quick.
I think it's.
when you share, there's a check mark.
Yeah, hold on one sec. Let me stop sharing and then just figure
Okay,
out.
so click share.
Share screen.
And now, before you go anywhere,
Yeah.
click share sound in the lower left-hand corner.
Great.
And also check the other check mark
Optimize.
Okay, great.
and then share.
And let me share from this right over here. Oh, I gotta do it from that computer. Okay, Good, I knew there was a workaround, we just forgotten.
Thank you for doing this part.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see if it works.
Hi, my name's Emily Mitchell. I am a Richmond resident and visual artist. I have had the to participate in Radiate in a number of ways. I've taught classes in the space. I have shown my work as an artist at the art festival in September, participated in painting the murals outside, and run classes for adults and children, as well as my own children taking classes at Radiate. One of the beautiful benefits of having a community art center is access for families to create together in a space that is warm and friendly and inviting and accepting of all art mediums and all bodies. And I think it's really different than, say, a paid studio like in some of our other nearby towns, because it is so much more accessible to everybody. There are ways for people to have equal access to art making in an art making space. And one of the things I've truly enjoyed about being connected with Radiate is how much art has been brought outside of the building and into the community as a whole. It is my really huge hope that our select board and our community continues to.
I'll leave the room, play the videos at full volume. You guys can all hear, no, but that'll be the workaround. If you want to hear the videos and then the CT wants to hear the videos, I'll just take my computer out.
Oh, I get the point.
I'll play both videos in succession.
No, I hear what you're
Turn
saying.
this back on
That should
noise,
work.
and that way you won't have to hear it. Yes, I'll start this over. So
I
just,
noticed on the speaker icon, the volume was all the way down.
yeah, because it has to play audio through here to come through here.
Mhm.
And so when I do that, there's delays.
Oh.
So I'm gonna just go in another room, play both
Okay.
videos, and then you can maybe change that. But I'll be back in 3 minutes.
Technology.
Ignore the man behind the curtain.
Gotta have to work around. It's like the Wizard of Oz. It's Thanksgiving time.
50 years ago, we put men on the moon. Today, we can't play a video.
Yeah, I know. There's sure no Wizard of Oz.
Hi, my name's Emily Mitchell. I am a Richmond resident and visual artist. I have had the participate in Radiate in a number of ways. I've taught classes in the space. I have shown my work as an artist at the art festival in September, participated in painting the murals outside, and run classes for adults and children, as well as my own children taking classes at Radiate. One of the beautiful benefits of having a community art center is access for families to create together in a space that is warm and friendly and inviting and accepting of all art mediums and all bodies. And I think it's really different than, say, a paid studio like in some of our other nearby towns, because it is so much more accessible to everybody. There are ways for people to have equal access to art making in an art making space. And one of the things I've truly enjoyed about being connected with Radiate is how much art has been brought outside of the building and into the community as a whole. It is my really huge hope that our select board and our community continues to support and get behind Radiate. In fact, an even greater way than they possibly do now, with some budgeting and some funding, and it's just a good, clean space fit for purpose that allows us to continue to have a glorious, welcoming, warm community art center for all. Thank you.
And then we've got a second. Yeah.
So I thought Radiate was really cool because it's like a space in town and it was open to a lot of people. Also, they have so many cool like materials and supplies there that really like inspire your creativity. And all of the camps and things that they organize are really cool. Like I did one of the art camps and we did a lot of like fun activities. So I thought Radiate was really cool because it's like a space in town.
Good pitch.
That was the best. She just did that. Her mom said she did it in one take. And in 1 minute, she explained what I wanted to say in the whole presentation. So I'm very thankful for Viola and her sharing.
So is that?
Sure.
Whole thing?
And then I have one more.
Okay.
Okay, so if those friends were not convincing enough, here are a lot of great reasons why we should include art in our community town center. Art's a way of communicating. It gives people voice. It encourages expression. Art generates discussion on social issues. Some of the ways that we've done that so far with the public window murals, the climate action project, and they really help us to understand other points of view, which I think this committee is also, you know, interested in and can see the value in. Art helps communities cope in times of crisis. For example, we provided through a grant $20,000 worth of art materials to our community during the pandemic so that kids could do art at home. Art combats the loneliness epidemic and really supports mental health. It gives us intergenerational place to gather as a community. So when you're talking about developing spaces, the art space can be more than a space for art. It can be a space for meeting as well. It really develops and helps develop a sense of community identity and increases community engagement. Identity examples would be like the town banners that you see on the road that were developed and created, starting with a Richmond Elementary School idea and going all the way through artists and then being pushed out to the community by hanging in town. And it attracts people and businesses into communities. It creates innovation and it's fun.
Okay, don't.
And then I just pulled these were from the visioning committee originally. So this was in 2014 when we looked at what is the town looking for our town to do. And if you go to the next page, you can just see that out of all of those blocks of interest, many of the things Radiate can meet with an art space supported by the town. And then there was additional community input when people were asked to rank their priorities. And as Jeff was saying, the top priority was clearly providing a great municipal offices for our town employees. But second, and very close to that, was developing a space that was for nonprofits in our community. And through all the things I've just shared with you, Radiate clearly meets that criteria. So we're here today because in the latest sheets from the town hall committee, it said the select board will determine how to allocate space to accommodate current and future tenants. And we are asking for specific consideration / reconsideration in that decision-making. And I would see that as including a re-examination of the physical layout. So a little bit of what we talked about at the beginning in terms of the renovations, with really an eye towards the concept of having a strong community base of nonprofits that are in our town center. And we think this town center renovation is important for all of the reasons Jeff listed, as well as including Radiate art space. And so we definitely want to get behind that project.
So, first, thanks for this. Or a question, did the committee deal with what kind of space needs you have? Like what's literally square footage, do you know?
I mean, I think we would be willing to engage in discussion about that. I don't think we have like a hard and fast number. And so really it would be more about, I mean, we've talked about some things like how many people we would want to be able to have in a space at one time.
You know,
That's what
your
those sort of
minimum would be?
numbers.
What your minimum amount of space would be?
What our minimum
Yeah,
amount of
any
space
less
would
than
be.
that would be just too elbow to elbow.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd be willing to look at that and talk about it.
Well, where I'm going is, frankly, because I guess we're immersed in budget season. I'm thinking, so what percentage of the building you're asking for and at what cost? So if it were 10% of the building, it would be $1 million. Just for context. So I think this is gonna come up when we go to a bond vote, like how much are we spending for what purpose? So I think we should just also be clear about what it means. And I'm not saying that for or against any use, including Radiate, just be clear about it.
Right, and I think
Yeah,
that
that's
would be a really powerful thing for the town to be able to say, 30% of our town building usage is targeted towards nonprofits that support our community, and this is where that money's going. So I think that would be a strength, not a weakness.
I will also say it's my perception, and I use this term freely because in the term bias, because it's a social psychology term versus, an IST thing. So my bias from when we started this, post-school, it was really intended to be interim. And I remember the conversations being absolutely clear that the short-term arrangement does not imply a long-term relationship. This is the time then, I think you're right, to start talking about the long-term relationship, but just to be clear, at the outset, we said the fact that you're a tenant now does not mean you will be a tenant in perpetuity to any of the organizations. And it's why I think we should at least reboot what are their criteria and consider what are the current needs. 2014 is not that long ago, but it actually, there's a somewhat different complexion of people in the town in the 10 years in between. So that might be something to consider, like how do we get input on the criteria? And again, I'm talking process. I'm not either speaking for or against Radiate for what that's worth.
And I think we understood that as a tenant. And that's why I think this is an important meeting for us to have with you to say, like, as you're making these next steps, yes, that was an interim plan. Let's look at what the future plan is, and let's do some of this arts. Let's do some of the civic engagement when we have a chance to really build it in to our structure.
Right.
I think this is an ideal time to have that discussion. I hope we can have it.
Right, and a couple other things to add. One of the things we're curious about is to the extent that organizations can share space. So, for example, the Senior Center and the Historical Society, a lot of what they might need, they can share. So, it's just vaguely possible that maybe you would have a synergy with our community cares camp, maybe be able to share some of that space. So there's a lot of balls in the air, and none of them have come down yet. But we do need to have the discussion that Bart has referenced, I think.
So a couple of things. One of the things that has been frankly, a challenge for the town center committee to deal with is the needs for the police. The police is, one of those town services that we felt we were charged with trying to find space for. How much space? That's hard to say. We haven't had a full police department since the committee was formed, and it's in flux right now in a really good way. It seems to me that hopefully we will need more space than we've had in the past for police, and so that's one of the challenges that the committee has dealt with. The committee, and I hope you feel this, the committee has been really trying to be supportive of Radiate, and really it's hurt the committee a great deal that we haven't had a ready answer for it. The committee has felt the support and the love that the community has for Radiate, and wants to accommodate them. And yet we do not feel it's the committee's charge to make those decisions. And so what the committee is looking to really is for the select board to give us some direction. And I'll say one more thing. We are at the juncture right now, within 2 weeks that we'll be coming back to the select board to set a bond number. We will be asking the select board to set a bond number. We can do some juggling and conceptual ideas on how the top floor could be reconfigured. But if we want to have a bond vote by town meeting, the select board needs to make a decision in December. So, we don't have a lot of time to, reconfigure and do all of that. The architects are willing to talk. you know, and to come up with some conceptual ideas. They cost about $1,000 a day to do that. You know, so the committee is asking for direction for where should the committee go from here.
Lisa, David, any comments, questions?
No. I do have a question for Radiate. How much public involvement are you able to tolerate, I guess, in your activities, or do you not want any? I mean, I know you get people interested by just they peek in the door and they go, and they can't leave because they're watching. That's good for you. But does much of that happen, or do you have like a prescribed number of people who you know are going to come pretty much down to the person?
I think it depends on the activity you're talking about. So some of our classes are pre-registration and we announce them through the schools and through the community and those would be pretty fixed numbers. And then there are larger events we have and community-based events where it's open to the public.
Free for all, yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, you've got some control, in other words. Okay. How many people do you think, I mean, just on off the top of your head, on a pre-invitation kind of program or whatever you got going on, how many people would you expect to be involved in that?
Like in a
Including-
day or?
Yeah, I mean, on average, beginning to end, or including your staff or helpers and so forth, how many people do you think would be involved?
In a day though, or in a whole?
Well,
I guess I'm
in a
not-
given day.
One
you
time,
can average that.
how many
Yeah,
people
one
in the
time, right.
room?
So I mean, I would say, I think our hope would be like being able to have 15 people, 15 students and an instructor in a room would allow us to have a family events, would allow us to have individual after school events.
Okay. And are you building on programs you've run for a while?
Yeah.
Okay, you're not planning something new with a new space that you know of?
Correct. I mean, we're always looking for new ways to engage the community in art, so I'm not going to say no to that.
Not a-
But we do have other things that, you know, we're continuously approving and continuously building on the things that we already have.
Okay. We have a question in the chat from Connie Bono, since we're discussing the town center a little bit. Is there space designed for additional administrative staff in the building?
Okay, so most of the space that we're having designed so far is office space. So we do have tenants, you know, like our community cares and the senior center and the historical society that are in addition to you know, town staff. We have not been able to figure out how to make this building bigger. And I'm not trying to be facetious, but you know, adding an addition onto the building is not really, you know, within the scope of what we've come up with. So any of the space could be reconfigured for additional town staff, you know, so, and I think most of the tenants recognize that. I know, you know, we've talked with MMCTV about that, for example, and it was part of the interim criteria was that if the town needed space in the future for, you know, additional staff, there would have to be some recognition and flexibility. I think we have a lease that says something to that effect as well for all of the town. You know, another challenge with the Radiate space is really, it's kind of a lovely space. They've done a really nice job in the basement. However, it is not handicap accessible. And there is no real easy way to make that happen. The basement is not configured to do that, even if you could get beyond the flood issue. So that's a floor that's not available, and that shrinks our available occupied space to a certain degree.
Definitely one of the positives of moving up into the space where our clients would have access to the elevators would be that we would be eligible for a huge number of grants that right now we can't do because we're not ADA accessible. So we could bring so much more money into this town to provide community arts if we had that accessibility.
So I will say right now, you know, depending how they use some of the hallway space, they have 2 different rooms. Oh, I think we figured it was something on the order of 1,000 square feet, 1,000 to 1,500 square feet altogether. That's hard to accommodate up here.
Right. And we're not necessarily asking for that.
So the typical classroom space in a school is about 45 square feet for per person. So if you're talking 15 people, you're talking somewhere around, 700 to 700, 800 square feet, minimum for 15 people. So that's the scale we're talking about. That would be about half the size of the police department. Half the size of this half of the building, something like that.
Okay, so there are other things on the agenda, but this is clearly this is a discussion that has many stakeholders. And I agree with Barb that we should revisit the criteria. But I also want to say, I think I speak for hopefully most of the select board, and that we see a benefit to Radiate. I have really enjoyed some of the things like the egg hunt around town. I went around taking photos of that and actually printed up a book and gave it to Rebecca. So we will definitely continue the discussions.
So one last thing, if I can, and I apologize, Jay, for taking up so much time here. The way we have it labeled on the floor plan, it's around your.
Do we need to show the floor plan?
Sure. We have different color coded. We have one color for town services downstairs. On this floor, the blue is police. And the purple are like meeting rooms. And this is reconfigured a little bit because I think we have the Historical Society near where the break room is, but it's the same concept. The orange are tenant spaces. And I think one of the things that's precipitated this discussion is that there are names on each of those tenant spaces. What we could do is in publishing a different iteration of this, we could say tenant space. That was
Right.
just.
That would feel a lot better to us.
Yeah.
And that would answer basically the question why we came here, and that is that we were still under consideration instead of being off the table.
We could definitely do that. And what I would suggest is, the better time to have this process question is after a bond vote. Because if there isn't a bond vote, you don't have to move. If the bond vote fails, we're not doing anything with this building, and that would be problematic, but.
The only thing about that would be that I think you're gonna get a benefit.
Mhm.
I think it's gonna benefit you.
So would
to-
that
to
feel
have
better
those-
to label this as a tenant?
Oh,
space?
I think we can all agree it would. I want to add a couple things. Up there at the top, we currently have it labeled Historical Society and Senior Center. We've had discussions with them and they do agree that there's possibilities for sharing space, so they might not need as much square footage they've got. And if we scroll down to the MMC TV space, that space is larger than I'm president of the board, need. A lot of that is just, if you walked in there, that's a lot of open space.
Yeah.
And so, there are examples where there may be space savings that we could spend on other tenants. But I think in the short term, it would be good if we do label those, more generically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you for your time. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And I hope that you perceive us as being open to further discussions
Absolutely.
and supporting the work that you're doing. And so please reach out to us. We're here tonight, but we're around and this is important to us.
We appreciate you being engaged.
Yes, thank you very much for taking the time to come, and I especially want you to pass thanks on to the young lady who
Yeah.
nailed it on the first take.
Okay, I'll let her know.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is listed as Review Code of Ethics. Now, I'd like to give a little bit of background. The town of Richmond has had a code of ethics for some time, and it's very important that we do. The code of ethics governs the appropriate behavior of all town officials, including committee members, including incredibly important positions like weighers of coal.
I hear to it every day.
I say that because of my op-ed in the Washington Post about the importance of weighers of coal who have no coal to weigh, nonetheless doing so ethically.
Might be more significant than some federal position.
That was noted at the time by the Post. Now, we had a version of our ethics policy that was dated through, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong folder. We had a version that was approved on August 19th 2019. And then we decided as part of a review of town policies and so forth, that maybe we should take a fresh look at it. And Lisa Miller and Connie Bona, our town finance director, and I, to a very limited extent, because I got busy, looked over what was in the current policy, what was in the VLCT model policy, and came up with an updated plan, which was then put before the select board, and we didn't really we said, looks good, and approved it. But that's not a very transparent process. And I think I agree with the people, Bradley Holt, for example, who spoke up last time and said that when you're looking at something as important as an ethics policy, there should be some actual discussion. So in our packet, we have the VLCT model policy. The VLCT model policy can be enacted in toto by a town, just search and replace, put their town name in, or you can use it as an inspiration. We have the 2023 policy that we just ratified in August, and we have the 2019 policy. And we can open the door on a further revision if people think it would be necessary. Before we go to members of the public to talk to us about where they think there are deficiencies, I'd just like to briefly give Lisa and Connie an opportunity to kind of give us a little more background of how they see things. Connie, do you want to speak or?
Sure. Our code of ethics was outdated, and I think due to staff turnover, it just hadn't been updated since 2019. And when I went to some financial training back in March, a very big piece of that training was code of ethics and conflicts of interest and how that applies to everything finance, because everything has a cost that we do in the line of business. So with that said, I went back and I dug out our policy, which I did not have a Word document of. So it's like, okay, well, we'll just retype it. And I grabbed the VLCT policy, which I did not have a Word document of. And we met in my office and we kind of went paragraph by paragraph. And in the end, we decided the VLCT policy was definitely a better model. So in the process of doing the Word document, that's what we started with, extracting a few things that did not pertain to the town of Richmond. We kept things more general rather than picking on a specific situation. And then we went back to the Richmond policy to make sure that we had captured everything that was in the new policy that we did. And this is where we landed. I think the words are more that of the VLCT one. But the ideas are really the same.
Hey, Lisa, would you like to add anything to that?
No, Connie's right. We worked, back and forth on this, and we did try to remove some of the language clutter. There was a lot of adjectives and things that just, you're looking for the answer out of 20 words. Well, if we can reduce it down to 10 words or 12 words, we're better off, period, as long as we don't lose the intent and the content. So that's what we did. There's one piece actually, that seems to be problematic, and it was weak even at the time we looked at it. But VLCT didn't offer anything that we thought was solved it. And I'm not going to go making up language, out of the blue on a policy. So we've got it in there the way it was presented by our old policy and by VLCT, kind of a merge of the two. I think it's weak, and it's
Which section might that be?
that would be the can't lick my fingers. The pages apart. The recusal of an officer. Okay, under Article 5, the public officer shall self-recuse the matter under consideration. Public officer that self-recuses may, but not must, explain the basis for that decision. The recusal is a recusal. They're not part of the decision. So I want to say why, it would be very helpful, but it's not necessary. However, there's separately a section that we weren't able really to reword without going way outside the boundaries of what we're trying to do. Article 10, exception, the recusal provisions of Article 8, which I didn't read, but I could, shall not apply if the municipal legislative body determines that an emergency exists or that actions of a quasi-judicial public body otherwise could not take place. In other words, someone recuses himself and there went their quorum for making a decision. In that event, we don't really have a solution.
Well, that would have to be an emergency, because if it's not an emergency, you could defer
Just
the
wait
meeting,
until,
wait till
yeah.
you do it.
exactly, or
Right.
call the alternate or whoever and see if they can. Yeah, so, right, that didn't seem to be worth, raising an alarm about, but I think there are members of the public that are concerned about that. So maybe we need some language to what you just said. We wait until we can, conduct action or conduct business. Okay.
So I have a question, maybe best to Connie. Was the impetus to revise this based on the auditor's concern about fraud? It's one thing to have a conflict of interest, it's another to be worried about fraud. Is that the impetus for revisiting this?
It really went back to that training, and one thing that struck me was that statistics showed that towns that have a conflict of interest and code of ethics policy and conduct training on it every year, which we need to do, and have people sign it again every year, which we need to do. Statistics show that there were fewer cases of fraud. Now, that doesn't mean just employees. That means boards, committees, because conflict of interest can spread across all groups. So the auditors won't tell us what to put into a policy. They will advise us if something has to be stronger or if it's time for an update. They'll give suggestions, but they cannot tell us what to put in it. So what I grabbed from this really went back to that training and from everything that they said, saying, you know what, it is time for this to be looked at. It is time for it to be updated and do this every year going forward.
I have one other question. Is there a distinction between boards, commissions, elected officials, and quasi-judicial bodies? When I read it, it seemed to me that quasi-judicial bodies have the same or more stringent requirements than, boards, commissions, and others. Am I reading that correctly?
I can guess that. Yeah, the DRB, for example, is a quasi-judicial body.
We act as that sometimes. as well.
Exactly, and that's another thing. The select board could be. Maybe
And
it
have
isn't.
been the last 3 years.
Yeah, okay, could be a quasi-judicial. So I think the standard is higher for quasi-judicial body because its decisions can be appealed up through the court system. And whereas, your average committee, I don't think it could go that far, at least not right away. I think there's too much uncertainty in their decisions that could be seized on by either side in a court.
Do you feel that this document addresses that?
I think so. I'm a little, I think we're a little thin on the thing I just read, but otherwise I think we're okay. I've seen other, ethics policies that are, you're supposed to read it and then sign it. It would take you quite a while to even read through them. The longer it is, the less people are going to use it, unless they're going to read it, and the less they're going to retain it. Really, the idea here is if you signed it, great. Well, what did you sign? Well, you can remember some of these bullets, and that's pretty much it. That's the gist of it, is behave with, ethically. And we all know what that means.
Well, we think
Well, yeah,
ideally, if we're going to have people signing a policy, they should read the entire thing.
They should.
I mean, they really should. And
Yeah,
that
before they get to the end, they go, "Oh, I know all that. Oh, great.
right before they say, "Oh, I didn't know I signed that."
That's not okay.
Yeah. Okay, Bart. Okay, David. Okay, what I'd like to do is get some input from members of the public. If you guys would like to come up, and I'm hoping you can point out areas where you think that the policy that we revised to is deficient.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to revisit this. I think it's an important issue, and I appreciate you taking the time for this, and also appreciate the transparency on the background of putting the documents up there and all that. So thank you. So I've got some statements prepared. I just want to kind of walk through some of the some things here. So So for the past 2.5 years, we've been engaged as members of the public in the review process for a proposed land development project. And as part of our research, we watched past development review board meetings. And our intent with that was to really better understand the town's review process. What we found was DRB members repeatedly violating our town's code of ethics since that code was adopted in 2019. Through these recordings, we witnessed multiple DRB members represent clients in front of the DRB. We witnessed DRB members failing to recuse themselves when they had a conflict of interest. We witnessed many examples of DRB members claiming to recuse themselves, yet continuing to engage in the meeting in some capacity. In some situations, the conflict of interest was patently obvious, yet not explicitly called out as such. At the August 11th, 2021 DRB meeting, a member of the public raised a concern about a potential conflict of interest, and DRB members seemed to have no knowledge of the town's code of ethics. One DRB member chastised the member of the public who raised this concern, and then the DRB went into executive session in violation of Vermont's open meeting laws to discuss the matter. After returning from the illegal executive session, the DRB member with the conflict of interest continued to moderate the hearing while supposedly recused. Then in the subsequent hearing an hour later, the same DRB member did not recuse themselves, even though both hearings involved the same perceived conflict of interest. Notably, the applicant in both hearings was also an active member of the DRB at the time. These examples were violations of the town's code of ethics as adopted in 2019. And through their actions, DRB members demonstrated a complete disregard for maintaining the public trust. This was quite concerning as interested persons in a matter before the DRB. We considered filing an ethics complaint based on what we witnessed. However, a complaint could be seen as adversarial and would risk complicating our position as interested persons in an ongoing quasi-judicial and judicial matter. We also didn't feel that the town was prepared to grapple with these ethical concerns. It would be unlikely to fully recognize, acknowledge, or address our complaint. However, I now don't see any choice but to bring these concerns to this meeting and share as a case study as you revisit the town's code of ethics. The Vermont League of Cities template that's the basis of this updated code of ethics was created behind closed doors with no public review or discussion. The public has no view into who influenced or decided what was included in the document, or even what is in the VLCT template, as VLCT doesn't allow members of the public to download the document. My biggest concerns with this updated code of ethics are the recusal provisions no longer apply to quasi-judicial public bodies if the actions of the public body otherwise could not take place, and that public officials are now allowed to represent a private party in matters before town public bodies. In the first scenario, a public officer is only required to disclose a conflict of interest, but does not have to recuse himself. I believe the DRB is our town's only regularly operating quasi-judicial public body, so this change seems to be specific to the DRB. It is never reasonable to allow a member of a quasi-judicial public body to engage on a matter in which they have a conflict of interest. The integrity of the process is more important than the DRB's ability to function. The updated code of ethics places this exception alongside emergency situations, but with the current composition of the DRB, conflicts of interest are a routine and regular matter. The current DRB has several land lawyers or those who work in related fields as members, a situation which is ripe for conflicts of interest. The DRB should have more diverse membership with a broader range of perspectives, such as an affordable housing perspective and an environmental protection perspective. As it stands now, there are no alternates who could serve when another member has a conflict of interest. Failure to address these structural problems should not be an excuse to allow DRB members to continue to regularly engage on matters where they have conflicts of interest. This updated code of ethics also removes provisions around public officials demonstrating respect for others. In my experience, the DRB has repeatedly demonstrated disdain for and disrespect to members of the public. This includes the example I raised earlier, and a DRB member who was verbally abusive to me in a public meeting. It's important that the public officers not only demonstrate respect for members of the public, but that they conduct themselves in a manner that demonstrates respect for the rights of members of the public to engage in the public process. As you're aware, the Vermont State Ethics Commission has been holding virtual listening sessions regarding municipal ethics. In the listening session that I attended for members of the public, I was struck by how many issues others have had with DRBs in particular and with ethics around land development in general. I hope that the select board will take these concerns to heart, reconsider your recent updates to the code of ethics, and take steps to ensure the integrity of our town's public bodies. Again, thank you for your time and I appreciate looking at this issue.
So I'd like to ask a question. It sounds like the major area, this is where I want a correction if you feel it should be. The major area that we did not put enough teeth into is the requirement to recuse.
So in my mind, there's the two major issues. One is that exception section that accepts quasi judicial if they can't reach a quorum, that they're allowed to continue with a conflict of interest. So that's on I think Article 10, I believe.
Right.
Does seem like a.
Yep. And the other, yeah. And the other one was that they could now represent private parties. So the previous code of ethics, if you were, say, a lawyer, you couldn't represent a client with business before any town body, which might be, that's for the select board to debate, but that was the case before in 2019. And now that's, as far as I can tell, no longer in there. So if you're a lawyer, you can represent a client who has business before.
Okay. But in addition, what I heard during your discussion was there were numerous cases where people disclosed conflict of interest, and then when in principle they should have recused, they just kept on going.
Yeah.
Including the case you referenced where apparently somebody disclosed conflict of interest, said they recused, and then kept on taking part.
So yeah, so moderating the meeting, yeah. So saying I'm going to recuse, but I'll moderate the meeting. So I don't know how recusing and moderating are compatible, but yeah.
Controlling position.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you kind of have a list, which I don't think we have. You have written comments. Would it be useful to get those written comments? Hopefully they're organized like by section. So we have 3 versions in front of us already.
Yeah.
And then if we take comments or suggestions on the most recently passed version and contemplate changes on that, that's one way to move this forward. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay, so I can certainly do that. I mean, like I said, Article 10, the exception for quasi judicial boards, that's the number one thing that I'm concerned with. But I can certainly, if it's helpful, I can certainly submit written comments.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Really, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if Vermont has some special place for quasi judicial bodies as opposed to others. I mean, or is that just they've exalted themselves by writing that, you know? I mean, is there truly a difference when it comes to ethics?
Well, let me give you an example. When the Williams Hill Road subject came up the first fall I was on the board, I guess that's 21. We took testimony over at the library from quite a few people.
Oh, yeah.
And we were sitting as a quasi judicial body. When we were done hearing testimony and everybody went home, we were then legally allowed to do something that in most circumstances we don't. We were able to convene all together without at a member's house to discuss and render our verdict. And that was not the same thing as voting for an executive session. That the deliberations of quasi
Basically, it was an executive session.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have to have an open meeting and vote to move into executive session. We just, as the members of the quasi judicial body, we said, let's go to Christine's house on such and so date, and we figured it out.
Yeah.
So that's there are laws and policies regarding, I mean, quasi judicial body is not something somebody just says, I think we are one. You know, there are circumstances where clearly they are one.
Right. And we haven't brought that, specification into this
But
document.
I think, the colloquy we had right before we called Bradley up, that it's such a no-brainer to say it has to be an emergency before you say this guy gets to take part.
Yeah.
And it would be trivial to, I mean, Kirby, just to take an example, feels like there is a conflict, this person should recuse. Oh, but we don't have a quorum without this person. Then my thought is, it's not the end of the world if we have to come back in a week,
Right.
That's
not addressed.
that is an easy
specifically.
thing to remedy.
It's not an emergency per se.
Right.
It's a momentary thing.
So I don't see anybody on the board saying, no, that's ridiculous. I mean, I think that's, when you look at it, it's kind of like, that should be obvious. Were there other parts that people?
It's very subjective.
That do?
Just the term emergency is very subjective. What might be an emergency to me might not be an emergency to you. I don't know how we would define it.
I'm gonna go to Josh on that. I mean, there are a number of areas of law that affect what we're allowed to do in an emergency. Like, for example, this is the law. When we say every select board meeting, are there additions to the agenda? Technically speaking, we're not actually allowed to change the warrant agenda unless it's an emergency. A case being where we have to, in an emergency, pass a purchase order to acquire something that's going to keep the town from washing away. My little informational thing tonight was actually kind of borderline. We didn't make a decision based on it, but I felt it was worth sharing. I could have just said, this is public comment and avoided the trap. So David?
Well, there are times when we have something on a warrant agenda, but news comes in, so we have to modify the agenda. Let's say we're selling the town grader and we think all the bids are in, but then, we noticed that one wasn't opened and we have another bid, so we could change the agenda to add that bid to the.
There are legitimate emergencies, but
But
perhaps.
if I say, oh, well, we don't have a quorum, so that's an emergency, so I can't recuse myself, well, arguably that could not be an emergency.
I'm just wondering if like there's maybe a legal definition that we could get of what an emergency would be for an individual board. I can't think of many DRB emergencies for land use, but maybe there's something that arises at some point.
I mean, my sense is just if we identify the term emergency, that
Exactly.
needs to be defined.
I think we can do that in the terms up top
We
and
don't
maybe
use
our
that
attorney
word
or
exactly. It
VLCT.
just means-
Okay?
The word
Well, actually-
emergency means really urgent,
And
Is
the
anything
V-
that
and
urgent
the-
that we would be doing here?
But maybe the
the
VLCT
code,
has
there's
a,
actually a definition.
is there?
If
Then we
you
can add,
pull that up and go to page 5.
Yeah, emergency such as a condition that can't be remedied within so many calendar days or
okay, right.
section 5 or page 5.
On page 5. Or at least it's page 5 in my copy. The 3P3, it's about halfway on, there it is, right there. Section B, item B.
That's a peril to
Oh,
public.
there you go.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
or peril to public health, safety, or welfare.
So like the sewer pump.
Right. By no means could one say this DRB decision has to be discussed today and meet that definition of emergency.
Exactly.
Perfect, we can add that, yeah.
Yeah.
Add that in easily.
If I may just add a little bit of complexity to that is that, that's why I commented on the structural issues with the DRB, is because I think that's a really relevant point because, the DRB, I believe, does have timelines on sometimes, like they have to hear something within a certain period of time. And I don't know if that would qualify as emergency or not. So,
I buy this.
Not by that.
okay, but was saying, so I think that creates
Well,
I'm not sure the answer to that challenge, but I was saying there is a challenge there to consider. And I think that's why I point out the structural issues, because the ideal would be to avoid the situation in which you have so many conflicts of interest. That would
Right.
be preferable, right? So.
Now, as part of the composition of the DRB, I agree that a diverse body would be good. Unfortunately, we cannot make people apply, but we could do more to publicize each May. That we are interested in having a variety of candidates to choose from and let people know that no, it's not just God anoints people, but people come before us and ask and try to get more people volunteering.
In fact, I think there are 3 seats or 4 seats coming up in this
Mhm.
election.
I'll tell you now,
3 or 4.
there are there's 2 and 24, and there's still 2 vacant alternate positions.
Okay. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
So I just have a suggestion, if we can maybe ask the same folks to get input and contemplate some edits, maybe red line version.
Right.
The current policy and bring it back.
Mhm.
And I think once that newest version is finalized, given what we've heard today, perhaps re-promulgate it through our boards and commissions, including the DRB.
Mhm.
Yeah.
To say, pay attention, this is updated, and it might be worth a conversation, of course, with the DRB itself about the
Yeah.
concerns that were raised.
Yeah, since there is a record of violations.
Right, going into executive session just because you're annoyed at a member of the audience, if that did happen, that's not cool,
It's weakness.
And illegal.
not legal.
Mhm.
If I may, I think, I'm not sure the thing, but I had a chance to speak as a public member of the board. I don't know if there's anybody else who wanted to speak.
Oh, well, Connie does it for him.
Okay.
I think we need to go beyond just saying, here's a new policy, read it, understand it before you sign it. We actually need to train. We actually need to provide some examples like what we're hearing tonight. That is what the recommendation was at the training that I had, and I know other towns do that, including the select board will actually have one meeting. It gets brought before each section gone through, and then that's a time, well, you know what? I think this needs to be added, or this needs to be changed, just so that, yeah, so we're not just saying, here you go, you're all the new committee or board members this year, or you're a new employee, and you're responsible for understanding this, please sign it acknowledging that you've received it. We actually need to do the training.
I agree completely. Speaking as someone who spent 25 years as a corporate trainer,
I'm sorry.
pay the bill. Got me a lot of frequent flyer miles. One thing you do in a corporate setting when you've had people come for training, especially if it's remote and you know they're probably out there reading their Outlook while you're training them, is there's a quiz. And I like the idea of including scenarios in the training so that people can say, oh, so that does apply. But also I honestly think we should have some questions at the end that they will fail if they haven't actually read the thing and if they didn't pay attention. Because as we know, ethics is not just a nice thing. It's the kind of thing that town can get sued and our decisions overturned and spend a lot of legal money on if people don't follow it.
And corruption. I mean, it's right at the root of corruption.
Right. Some of the really worst examples of things going awry at the Vermont town level, 3-member select boards where they're all related to each other. And the town treasurer or town clerk is the daughter of one of the members of the select board.
What could happen?
They didn't have any money. Right?
Well, they had even less after she stole it all.
So,
It's awful.
for the DRB, they do have timelines, right? There are timelines that they have to make a decision by a certain time, or it passes without a decision. Is that correct?
They haven't reviewed their bylaws and their
Passes, I think
rules in a
no
while.
decision is.
They can continue a lot of things, but I don't know.
I don't know how long
That's a
they
good question.
continue it, you know, so
Right.
I don't know whether those deadlines would constitute a peril to welfare, depending on the development that's being reviewed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So it depends, you know, I mean,
that one's kind
you
of,
know, and it, you know, to cut the DRB a little slack, you know, it is hard to find people to serve on these kinds of
Clearly,
committees. And they have a lot to do, right? So, trying to get their work done with what, 2 meetings a month? Is that what they do?
they have one that they always attend and they have a second one if they need it.
Okay. So I just, you know, I don't know how busy they are, you know, I know, you know, we're pretty busy. You know, I don't know if other committees are as busy as we are, but.
Yeah. Well, potentially almost any committee in town could have decisions that would have far-reaching complications. I mean, most town committees don't make decisions formally. They bring the recommendations to us and we make them. But we only act on what's brought to us in some cases, except for people who, like Lisa, who go to all the meetings. Anyway, which is good. And, or those of us who try to read the minutes of the meeting. Still, you can make a decision that is not necessarily ethical, present it to us and we go, not knowing how it was drafted.
Right.
Oh, that sounds good.
Right.
So it's really something that, you know, I don't mean to be flip, but even the wearer of coal, the town fence viewer, and everybody above them should know what's in the town policy.
There's nobody above the coal layer.
Ooh. I'm, you know, maybe everybody else is up to speed, but I'm sure some members of the public are not, about the Vermont State Ethics Commission. So they're looking into this not just out of interest, but they're supposed to develop a proposed municipal ethics framework pursuant to H-125, also known as Act 53. So my point is that at some point that framework is probably going to land on our desks in a year or 2 from now, presumably.
Right.
So it's probably not our last bite at this particular apple.
Right. And the session that they most recently had was for members of the public. I believe the one specifically aimed
One tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning, 9 to 11.
Yeah, that one's for town officials, I believe.
Right.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, John.
Sure. I've served on a couple of DRBs, Richmond and otherwise. Grew up in Richmond. I think a lot of our DRB board members are locals. And if they're required to recuse themselves because of a personal relationship with one of the 2 parties, I can see a time that there may not be an opportunity for a 7-member DRB to have a quorum. There might be enough personal relationships of locals there that it just physically can't pass. The applicant is just going to be stalemated there because either the applicant, one of the disgruntled neighbors or supportive neighbors have a personal relationship or a family. And if you're required to recuse yourself, you're down to 3 people and sorry, your application can't push forward until the new DRB comes through.
Well, isn't there, I think that's why the ethics policy usually makes a distinction between having a financial interest in it. And I think also, or like, hey, I know Jeff, I served on a board with him 2 years ago. Our kids play soccer together. You would probably say that in the meeting, but that necessarily wouldn't be grounds for recusal. But if you and I were partners in a business and you were coming before the board, I would recuse myself. Good, I'm a partner in a business. So I think there's some level, like a bar.
Yeah, there is in the definitions, there's a more clear description of
Right.
where that line is. And it does say the last one under definitions, a conflict of interest, quote unquote, does not arise in the case of an official act or action in which the signatory has a personal or financial interest in the outcome that is no greater than that of other persons generally affected by the decision.
Right.
So, you know, the average person on the street, if it's going to affect them the same, like raising taxes, for example, it's a bad example, but no, that's normal activity.
I think.
It finds in D of conflict of interest, though, it says that an indirect personal conflict of interest arises when a public officer acts in a manner in which the officer's judgment may be affected because of a familial or personal relationship or membership in some organization desire to help that person or organization to further their own interests.
Mhm.
So if I have a son that's in the Boy Scouts and the Boy Scouts want to be part of a land development, I've got to recuse myself. Or if my friend is a neighbor and of someone that doesn't want development, I need to recuse myself, as I read it.
That's, well, again, you know, good questions.
It might be a harsh reading of it, but
I've seen times, not necessarily here, but times when a person had something, an interest that they were afraid might be held out as a conflict. They'll just announce it. They'll lay it on the table. Here's what I do. I'm painting this guy's house, for example. He's already paid me. I owe him the house. However, I also sit on a, let's say a planning commission, and that homeowner wants to buy the parcel next door and develop it. It's, if they lay it out on the table like that and say, yes, I'm being paid for painting for this person who also wants to come to my commission and, you know, get an approval. Does that neutralize the potential conflict of interest because it's out in the open? And I don't know.
I mean, I think it might, because you're not standing to gain financially from, right? Like if the board votes yes, and then the house gets painted and no, the house doesn't get painted, you probably recuse yourself. But if you've got a separate business, it might be enough to say, but that's where, I mean, back to Connie's point about training, getting somebody in to sort of ask those questions about
Maybe that's the
when
real answer then.
do you need to, because I'm not an expert on it. I've been in a few of these things where I've done that when I was on the board in Bolton. I was also vice president of Bolton Valley. So there were times I would say, here's my job.
And there's plenty of what you're looking for.
Well, there were times I had to recuse myself and there were times that I didn't, based on what the topic was.
Like, you know, I'm a member of the Historical Society, so should I not participate in making a decision of whether?
Yes, you should.
No, well, I would disagree with that.
The MMCTV, I'm president of the board. And you'll notice every time something comes before us that is MMCTV asking for something, I don't vote and I don't comment on it.
Well, that's a for-profit enterprise, you know?
No, it's not.
Well, it is an enterprise that pays rent. If everyone who belongs to the Historical Society can't make a decision about the Historical Society, I would argue that we would likely not be able to get a quorum. You know, and I think that was John's point is that, you know, if you belong to an organization.
We're in New York City, it would be easy to find people aren't related.
Well, I mean, my choice would be not to recuse myself on making a decision about the Historical Society.
Okay, and I would argue with that decision because again, they do pay rent. They actually are the MFCTV and the Historical Society are both nonprofits who pay rent. And I would prefer, frankly, that you not discuss and vote on something for the Historical Society, because whether you benefit personally from it, I think it's better to, it's like the old maxim of Caesar's wife. If you know English major here, but the Caesar's wife is an aphorism that basically says, since Caesar's wife is going to be in the public eye pretty much all the time, full stop, every action she takes is going to be examined. She has to be purer than pure. And I've always taken the attitude that public officials err on the side of being Caesar's way. You know, err on the side of taking extra steps. And if it's unnecessary now and then, okay, but it's better to follow that principle than do questionable actions that then have somebody suing or appealing.
So where I would take exception with that is particularly for elected officials. The remedy for elected officials is not getting reelected. You know, the public has a remedy for, you know, if they feel that a decision is not, if there is a conflict. So and I only bring this up as a hypothetical. Not as an actual case. And I think what John was trying to point out, and I agree with him, is that there's some nuance here, you know, and we all belong to lots of organizations. And if just membership in AARP means that I can't, decide something about the senior center.
No, I think
that would be problematic. So, I mean, there's just some nuance is all I'm suggesting.
And capturing those, that's the devil in these details.
I would just add that there are, on a regular basis, numerous issues that are not at all nuanced. And
That's
it's
troubling.
a
Yeah.
good place to start, as I would suggest.
Yeah.
That,
Okay.
yeah, there's certainly debate around the nuance, but there are ones that are, I would suggest, are pretty straightforward. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so here's my suggestion. I know Connie's got her hand up. You will put your suggestions in writing.
Yes.
You'll communicate them to us. Maybe we should, think about, is there anything else that we think maybe should be tweaked? And then we can revisit this at the next full meeting, not the budget meeting. If we feel at that time that we've got our legal ducks in a row, we may want to talk to the VLCT and say, do you have any guidance for us on this scenario? And then the thing is, once we've picked and adopted a new policy, I think we really need to work really hard to come up with some effective training that doesn't take days where people won't come to it, but that's required of people, especially people who are on a quasi judicial body, that you would have to take this. Connie.
So two things on that, Jay. I think I would ask VLCT if they could do a training for us.
Yep.
But on the
When?
other note, I wanted to revisit, you had mentioned like where there's a relationship with a client or something like that. And I believe Lisa and I had looked at that and we felt that that was redundant because it's definitely covered in the conflict of interest section without giving any labels to anything. And my fear would be if we start picking certain instances, then you can run into a situation saying, well, you listed A, B, and C, but you didn't list this one, so it must be okay. That's where I'd be inclined to keep it more general and stick with the definitions we have. I don't know how the rest of the group feels about that.
That's correct, Connie. Yes, trying to enumerate every possibility gets into a really big policy, and the larger it is, the less it's going to be read. So there's a mix that we were searching for.
Okay.
Maybe we do need a few. Again, training would be a great way to
Right.
go through these examples. Maybe we need a couple of examples in here. Like,
For any training, we also need to put together a fact. Because sometimes, reading a regulation is this long, whereas if you say, would I have to do this in the following circumstances? Yes, I mean, a fact is a good way to present stuff like that. And also I think we need to develop some scenarios that are relatively realistic and to say, if this scenario were to come up, what would be the right approach? We could even say, for answers, see this guide, but first, what's your thought? There's a lot of things we can do, but I think we can all agree that the habit a lot of people have of just saying, here's a policy signed, toss, and never thinking about it again, not a good habit for any of us, including, members of the select board, including me. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for people, John and Connie and company who commented. And does anybody have any last thing they want to say on this before we move on?
Well, somebody, I think it was Connie, somebody mentioned training before we sign these things, and signing it is a legal commitment that you're going to do it, and if you don't, you have to answer why. But training would really help, I think.
Yeah, and if the LCC does the training, that's one less thing we
And
have.
I tell you, those can be a lot of fun. Maybe we charge people for them.
We'll do a two package, training and water and sewer meeting. Yeah, 2-for-1 admission. It'll be amazing.
We won't be able to charge for this.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
so our next item, I believe, should be relatively quick, but I've been wrong many times before. We have right now kind of what I guess we call surplus cash on hand. It's not money we can just spend. Some of it is ARPA money, but we've been moving it through a series of CDs to get the back and return on it until it is gone from our ledger. And we have how many CDs we don't have?
We have 2 that are active and one just matured for 500,000, and all 3 of those CDs right now are $500,000.
So, Connie Bona, Finance Director, and Treasurer Jim Fines, and I don't see Jim on the call, have recommended that we purchase a $1 million CD as that 500,000 CD has reached maturity. They believe that there's enough cash on hand to put 1 million into a CD. After Monday's account payable round, we're going to have at least $3.5 million in the general checking account. And so, long story short, the recommendation is that we set up a 6-month CD in the amount of $1 million. You want to add anything to that?
Nope.
Questions, David?
Jay, this is David. I move to recommend that the town treasurer, let me try again. I move to recommend to the treasurer that the town of Richmond set up a 6-month certificate of deposit in the amount of $1 million.
Third, second.
Do that.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
We have a motion from Dr. Evil. We have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Lisa Miller, to recommend to the town treasurer that the town set up a 6-month certificate of deposit in the amount of $1 million. Is there any comment from any member of the board or the public?
Is the interest rate any, I mean, I hope it's
We
favorable.
shop around.
Okay, yeah, but we'll get a better interest rate with a larger sum. I
Yes.
assume.
Yeah,
As of Friday, the TD Bank rate is 4.7, but by the time that they do this, they might look at Northfield and go, oh, if we do it today,
Fine.
Black Friday savings, 4.8.
Rates are gonna go
and I
down.
think, Connie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think TD said a 500,000 would be 4.6, and then when you do $1 million, it goes up 0.1%. So we get 4.7 by doing that.
Twice the amount.
So my preference I would have a strong preference towards Northfield Savings Bank over TD Bank.
But we'll look at the rates.
But, the rates, the rate will be, I'm sure.
Because they're there.
It's not the most important thing, but
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion.
I did look at all the banks as I do every time. TD Bank has come in higher than all the others. And it could be even, it's higher than the general public because we need the standby letter of credit where our money is guaranteed at a different level.
to point out that TD Bank is the bank that left town and Northfield Savings Bank is the bank that came to town recently.
That's, and I see your point, but if we get 2 points better by going to
Yeah.
TD, that's 2
Money
points better.
talks.
That's money
Points
talks.
better on $1 million, that actually is real money.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, please state your name and your vote.
Bart, aye. David, aye.
Jeff, I.
Lisa, aye.
And J.I. Thank you. Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for.
Dun-dun-dun.
Update on the Richmond Police Department. Our acting chief, our Hinesburg police chief, that is our acting Richmond chief, is with us tonight to discuss recent updates. This will include the security system, the sale of 2 cruisers, progress in hiring officers, logos added to all cruisers, cruisers being inspected and repaired by a mechanic, snow tires, updates to rifles, stocks, guns, bolts, scopes, and in-car cameras and anything else that he thinks would be worthwhile. So, Anthony, the floor is yours. Please share away.
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
All right, sorry. I forgot Josh and I talked about all that. So our drug take back was successful. We were, I believe, out of 28 departments that contributed, we were Hinesburg and Richmond combined were third highest in the state as far as what we took in terms of weight. I think once we get the cameras in, which will be the upgrade to the police department cameras in the office should be either this Wednesday. I have an appointment for this Wednesday, but our camera guy, he has all the parts and everything. He's not sure because of Thanksgiving. We might end up getting it next Tuesday instead. But I think with that said, I think that my long-term idea would be to move that take back box downstairs in front of the other police entrance. I think you're missing out on a lot of time that people could be dropping stuff off because it's kind of locked upstairs. So that's sort of a suggestion I would make. Of course, it would be the same thing, bolted down and everything. As far as the cars, in Hinesburg, each car has lockout kits. A long time ago, every police department would unlock your door if you got locked out. We now do that in Richmond. I ordered each vehicle a lockout kit. And instead of calling AAA and it taking hours, we can do it in about 2 minutes if you call us. And it's always available. I suggest that anybody that gets locked out of their vehicle give us a call. I don't think there's ever been a car that we couldn't get into. As per state law, in January of this year, the law changed where every department has to have soft restraints in the vehicles in case we encounter somebody that's having a mental health crisis. Richmond did not have soft restraints. Legislature said it wasn't good enough that a police department has one set, which is what a lot of police departments were doing. So I ordered each Richmond vehicle, a set of soft restraints. They're inside the vehicles with the lockout kits. Because I was ordering soft restraints, I also ordered enough handcuffs to give to our next 2 officers when we do hire them. So that's taken care of, and little by little, I'm going to try to order things as that officers are going to need. Some stuff I'm not going to be able to get until we actually get that officer because it's size specific, but things like handcuffs, batons, things that I know that I could order ahead of time, I will. The Ford was stripped and sold. The second Ford was just stripped as well. So we have, not only did we just sell our 6th vehicle, but the 5th vehicle is going to be ready. And I got to talk to Josh about that, but that's going to be put out for bid as well very shortly. So that will put us down to 4 cars, and that's a whole nother discussion. But all 4 of those cars are now marked. So the 2 Durangos were unmarked; they are now marked. The Tesla was rebranded because it had sort of ghost graphics on it, which I didn't think it did it justice for just how nice it looks now. And the Ford, after the other 3 were done, we all sort of agreed. I think Jay, you were in on that conversation. It was just wise to do the 4th one. So all of the cars have identical graphics, and all of them have new graphics. One of the Durangos had its inspection, brakes, rotors, everything done. That was our worst one. That was the one that when we tried to get it out of the parking spot, it was early summer, it was sort of seized solid. So that's taken care of. As time goes on, I will continue to make sure that the vehicles are taken care of and do the appropriate maintenance on each car. 2 of the Durangos, our 2 only Durangos, were upgraded to studded snows. I've just been through too many Vermont winters to not drive police cars with studded snow tires. The only downside to having studded snows is that they're not as good if we were to be in a pursuit, and hopefully we are not going to be in many pursuits in Richmond. So I think the risk of being able to weather the storm is better than the downside. And that's what I've also done each year with Hinesburg. So I bought Hakkapeliitta 10s. They are once the spring comes around, we'll throw the summer tires back on. I'm a AR-15 armorer, so I've been upgrading the rifles. We've got new bolt carrier groups, new trigger groups, new stocks, and I just talked to Josh. We're going to be ordering new scopes for each one, and same thing. I'm just trying to get what a lot of I think Richmond officers were doing. They were putting their own equipment onto the rifles as they were using them. I don't really like a situation where people are putting their own stuff on rifles. If an officer needs something, which in this sense it was an optic, we should be providing the optic. So Josh agreed, and we're going to be making that purchase. Ammo, I ordered enough ammo to last us if we were at full staff the next year to get us through training and duty ammo. Everything's ordered. It just came about 2 days ago. So we're good to go with that. We have rifle ammunition, handgun, and shotgun. Like I said, we already covered the cameras in the PD. We do have a new hire, potentially. He is currently in the background. Our detective, Hinesburg detective, is currently reviewing. He made it through the interview process, which did include one select board member, town manager, my team, me. Seems like a great candidate. We will know more once we get through this holiday. We should have a better sense of where we are with him. Ordering badges. I did decide to go back to our old Richmond badge, which is very similar to the Hinesburg badge. And those have been designed. You can actually see them on the police car. And I'm probably going to talk to the person. They're from Utah, where I have to order them. I'm going to be placing an order for future officers. So we'll probably buy maybe 6 officer badges. Each officer would get 2 or 3 badges: corporal, sergeant, chief, whatever we would need moving forward for staffing. I don't number badges this way. We're not locked into who gets what and how many. It would just be according to rank. Along with that, I emailed the people that cover IDs. We'll also be able to order ID cards. It actually takes a little bit of legwork to get a ID company to print police IDs. So it's just an important thing. It doesn't seem like it now, but once we do have new hires, they are going to need to potentially carry a badge, carry a gun. And if that's the case, they will need ID. Something that seems small, but it's an important thing. Yeah, I have access to Richmond's Facebook. I hope everybody keeps an eye on that. We'll be posting things such as updates, and when we do things, stuff like the Grinch, there's going to be a few other things that we'll be doing. And I've contacted Toys for Tots. One of the things that we do kind of in conjunction with the Grinch is going to be having a Toys for Tots container. So hopefully I could get that into the town center building. I do have the same one at Hinesburg. And I think that's most of what's going on, if anybody has any questions.
Chief, I just have a question on the in-car cameras. I had thought that our cruisers were outfitted with cameras. Is that not the case?
We don't have, I believe the last of the cameras were in the Fords. None of the new cars. The Tesla doesn't, and the Durangos don't have cameras. So I think after Al Buck left, that was the end of our department putting in-car cameras. And I do think they're very important. They're about 6,500 per car, and there's been a lot of talk about, do we need in-car cameras if we have body cameras, and I think the answer is yes. You shut the body camera off, it doesn't cover a car that gets pulled over and possibly somebody saying that you pulled them over and something happened that didn't actually happen. So it's really important, I believe, to have those in-car cameras in the cars.
I agree. The price just surprised me a little bit. What does a $6,500 camera do? We're not talking about plate readers and stuff. This is just the camera.
Just a regular watch guard in-car camera. It covers the front, and if you're transporting somebody, it would cover the in-car prisoner transport.
Okay.
Does the officer have to flip a switch to say, look at film inside now, we're driving, or does it know to do that?
There's settings where you can, for instance, in Hinesburg, if a car goes over 75 miles per hour, the in-car camera kicks on. I have it set up where if there's an impact, if they hit something, the camera goes on. But the way it works is if you turn your lights on, you turn your blue lights on, camera automatically goes on. So that's pretty much, there's lots of different reasons why the cameras will turn on, but for the most part, the officer puts it on when they conduct a traffic stop. They put their blue lights on.
Lisa?
Not yet.
Okay, do you have anything?
No, thank you for all of the activity. This is more activity we've had in the police department than we've had in quite some time.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I would just like to share as a select board member who was present for the interview of our officer candidate. I am eagerly looking forward to hopefully him starting. I think you will all be pleased with his credentials and what he brings to the table. And we have other things in the pipeline which are not as solid at this point, but I actually believe that we will probably have a fully staffed police department within a few months.
That's amazing.
And I think a lot of it goes to the chief, because people make a lot of decisions about which department they want to work for based on, do they have confidence in the chief? And I don't think we would be in this position if they was not doing such a good job as our acting chief. Okay, I'm gonna throw the
Thank
floor
you.
open to the public. We have no members of the public here in the room, but we have them online. Would anybody online like to ask any questions or make any comments? Actually, I'm gonna share one vaguely related thing. Josh and I, and a representative of Simple Route, which is our IT vendor, have been talking to the city of Burlington and the various Vermont state agencies about the best practice for getting traffic stop, arrest, and incident data, so that we can have relatively. We don't want to make the process of updating these be difficult, or at some point somebody will just lose interest and they're not being updated. But we have not let the topic of getting dashboards, if you will, for traffic stops, incidents, and traffic stops, incidents, and arrests. Those are the three databases that the state maintains. And so it would be nice if those could be automatic downloads from the state, but unfortunately this time they are still something that an employee with access to Valcor has to download. But there are some best practices that they've been able to share with us, and Simple Route is continuing at our request to pursue this. Patty?
There's a solution there somewhere.
Yeah, I was just wondering what's going on with the Grinch?
The Grinch.
Probably in coffee.
You can search it. He showed up in Hinesburg last year. Hopefully it'll happen for Richmond this year.
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, Chief, I'm not seeing any other hands going up here in the room or online.
I'll say one thing.
Okay, Lisa wants to say one thing.
Well, I just want to thank you for the work you're doing. And I tell you, the reputation of Richmond's police force and Richmond to go along with it, a whole lot better now than I know of any other time. So maybe my history doesn't go back far enough. That's okay. We're doing well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, our next item is a topic near and dear to my heart. It has to do with shared police services with Hinesburg. A lot of people, including myself, have noted that we're working really well with the town of Hinesburg on shared police services. And it's a proof of concept that we would needed to have happen at some point, and it's happening without us even having to take much of any steps. It's just organically happening. The town of Hinesburg has had a study on the future of police and fire services in Hinesburg. And we have been hearing for some time that it will be completed soon, real soon now. Hinesburg Town Manager Todd Odit says he expects a draft of the public safety study to be completed soon. Updates during the process of completing the study. The consultants have indicated that there continues to be interest in a shared police department. We think it would be helpful to get the subcommittee that discussed this last time together before the end of the year to check in on the interest of both municipalities and beginning discussions again. Any questions from?
So, you know, an issue that I think should be discussed is how to act in a similar way to Hinesburg for the various different things that we do. So things like we're talking later on about CJC. You know, how much is Hinesburg contributing to CJC versus Richmond?
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to have a shared department, we should be comparable. You know, one shouldn't be different than another. Same with the Howard Center or any of these other services that, you know, seem like it's either per capita or we should be on the same page with Hinesburg, I think. So, you know, it's just something to keep in mind as we discuss. I think you'll probably have to talk about wages as well, you know, the differences between.
There are differences because Hinesburg did not do the Williston bump.
Right.
And we did.
You know, so that'd be something that need to be discussed.
It strikes me that there are a host of policies and practices that come up, and some of them are not formal policies. And some of them were not, but should become formal policies that then would cross over across departments. I think that's the sort of anticipated, if not hoped for, future. And so I guess if we were going to move that forward, if we're resurrecting it, do we want to be clear about who's going back to that committee to represent Richmond?
Sure.
Just the Hinesburg group?
So.
I think it's a great idea to set at least one meeting.
With you in June, correct?
Well, actually, I have your name on here.
I think it was Jay and.
Or did,
I'm thinking about the very first time we discussed it. Yes, I am on
I
here.
think last time, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe the last
Okay,
time we
so
came
it is,
together.
right now it is legally the two of us and then Marilee Level and Phil Pouch from the Hinesburg site. So we need.
It's no longer on the board.
Yeah, I think they might need to.
So they'll need to do their side. I just think for us to be clear on our side, then we could have a green light to set up a meeting.
Okay.
I'm certainly comfortable with you two continuing to do that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
guys are willing to do it.
Yeah.
It's a vote.
One other comment I'd make, Jay, is just people are probably aware of that, at least here, but maybe not everybody listening, that collective bargaining is about to get underway.
Yeah.
So a reminder that our police department, while we only have really one sort of one officer who is on our roster, but on military leave, it is time to negotiate a successor collective bargaining agreement. So that will start up again. And most of that's embargoed because of the collective bargaining process. But just so a reminder that that is underway and it's related to the police department. And then the final thing is where I thought you were going, Jeff, when you started to speak, is what does the joint police department mean for space in this building?
Right.
No, that's a good question. I don't know. Definitely a good
There's
question.
no good answer.
I think it has an impact. I'm not sure what it is, or at least it leads to a consideration of what the space is. So that's just something I'm kind of saying.
St. Albans town, I think, has an outdoor swimming pool that they have a bubble that they inflate in the winter. And that they can eat. And so it's a 12-month-a-year pool. I'm thinking they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
It's
sure
at-
figure this out.
It's at the Hard XD area.
I thought that was
Yeah.
Winooski.
So anyway, I'm thinking giant inflatable bubble. That's got to be cheaper than bricks and mortar.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
We don't even need a roof. then.
Great idea.
Well, I think it just, for me, the physical space illustrates what does that mean? And it has been at least my assumption, which is probably a mistake, is that in whatever future iteration of a partnership with Hinesburg, there would still be a footprint in the building.
I would assume that too. I mean, the committee has assumed that as well. And that if there's a real advantage to being able to process prisoners at the Hinesburg station. You know, that's been helpful to us. You know, there'll be things like dispatch is like funny between the two and cars, you know, different policies.
Yeah, just
So, you know, the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times.
Yeah, this will be interesting. So do we have a negotiating committee? I think we do, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
With the collective
The
bargaining.
negotiating committee is Josh, myself, Bard, and our town attorney, John Clash.
Okay, great.
And we are very close to, there's a lot of, we have to agree on ground rules and all this and what we think should be collectively bargained and then schedule our meeting. We offered to the union to defer this till we had more employees and they said, nope, let's go now. So.
Who's speaking for the union on our behalf?
Chris?
Well, I mean,
Josh and
Well,
yeah,
John.
but any employees or, I mean,
Yeah, we haven't actually had our first meeting with the union yet, but I assume it would be Chris Hoare, who is the sort of, I guess, state or district representative from the union. I forget his exact name.
okay.
Maybe he's New England wide. And then and assume Officer Wilson would also be involved to whatever he can be.
Okay.
And if we finish the hiring process for our potential new candidate.
Yeah.
I would guesstimate that that's gonna probably come before we have a locked in union contract.
Okay, good. So we might be a player. Okay.
But a lot of after some years of going in circles, kind of, I really think that we're in a position to give Richmond the police department it deserves, and a lot of the credit again goes to the town of Hinesburg and Anthony Cambridge for helping get us going.
Well, my hat's off to you and Josh too. I mean, and Bard, you guys you had plenty of chances to ruin it and you didn't, so. I honestly,
Give me time.
the wrong move.
Congrats, you didn't break it.
Over yet.
Just keep not doing what you're not doing.
Now let's move on.
We're
The
doing.
next
It
item on our agenda
didn't come out right.
is an Eagle Scout project, and I have a lot to say about
No, wait, you want to do land trust, which I think will be 2
Oh,
minutes,
okay.
just to stay in order. It won't be long. though.
Michael, we'll be with you in just a second, sorry. We have on our agenda a brief update regarding the Richmond Land Trust for amending the easement over the Willis Farm Preserve to level the water and sewer lines to serve property along Route 2. We discussed this earlier tonight at the water and sewer meeting, and they sent a letter. The Land Trust sent a letter to us that came very short before the last week's meeting. Jeremy Hoff, the rep for the Richmond Land Trust, was not able to come tonight, so Gary Bresser came in his place. There are a lot of questions, a lot involved there, a lot of things we need to follow up on. So the Water and Sewer Commission will be proceeding on that. But right now, we really don't have anything exciting,
Right.
unless you guys want to.
You know, I would describe the fork in the road or the fork in the path that what we discussed is to use the existing easement that gives authority to serve the REAP property. They could build a line and it could be built to serve additional properties later. But if the REAPs are interested, especially particularly for housing on the front end of their property, which is still something of a question mark, and the feasibility and economic modeling of that. But that is one way to proceed, to use the existing easement in partnership between the REAPs and the Town Water Sewer Commission to get that line in place. which would, one net effect is to push any discussions of extensions further down the road. What it would take. We got some, I would say, not positive feedback about the path from some of the property owners that would be impacted, who came to tonight's Water Sewer Commission meeting. And there is still this open question of, this goal of connecting that path to the village. For those of you who remember our last select board meeting, just getting 5-foot shoulders all the way through the pinch points is like $5+ million. And that isn't even a full separate path, some of which, that's the sort of pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I'm really wrestling on how it might get there. So that is another wrinkle in this, the interest of the property owners and the utility of a path that doesn't have a clear way forward to connect to the village. Which all leads, I think, to a rational approach. Is there a way that we can sort of put guardrails around phase 1? And if we got that done, that would be an achievement after 8 or 10 years. And then we could turn to an additional extension as a possible future discussion.
Right. But for those of you who are Charles Dickens fans, we realize this has taken on some similarities with the legal case of Jarndyce versus Jarndyce. For those of you at home who have no idea what I'm talking about, go to Wikipedia, it's interesting. Okay, our next item on the agenda is our Eagle Scout project, and this is one that I'm really excited to see proposed. And so we have an Eagle Scout with us online tonight. Michael, we have a request for approval from you, but we know you would like to tell us all about it. So you are welcome to go ahead and unmute and tell us all about your proposal.
Hey, so I'm Michael. I'm a Life Scout actually with Troop 692 over in Williston, and I would love to build a American flag deposit box somewhere in the town of Richmond. I noticed that a lot of people I know from around here, my neighbors, my catechism teacher, don't know what to do when their old American flags get torn or tattered. And I noticed the same problem in Williston, and I was talking to my buddy about it, and we both had the same idea to build deposit boxes in our respective towns. And he did one in Williston, and it worked really well. And it filled up pretty quick, and people knew what to do, because a lot of people just don't know what to do, and they don't have anybody to give it to, because the only people who can retire old flags are scouts or the military, and people don't know how to get it to them. So I think building a deposit box somewhere in town would really help that problem, because again, it worked well in Williston when one of my peers did it. So I don't have a lot of hard details at this moment in time, because I'm in the very, very early steps of getting this approved, because after I get approval from you, I have to get it through committee in my troop. So I would like it to be made of some kind of wood. I'm going to weatherproof it, but if it could be under some kind of weather cover, that would be good. I know the town office shares a building with the post office here in Richmond, and there's a little pavilion there. That spot would be great, but that's really flexible if you guys have somewhere else you'd like it to go. And installation, I would like to see in summer 2024, but again, at this stage, that's very flexible. So really anything that you guys need from me at this point, I can pretty much accommodate.
Now, I'd just like to compliment you on your choice of project. My wife is sick and tired of hearing me driving around going, why do they even fly that? It's in tatters. Because I don't see that it does show any respect for the flag, to have a flag that is literally those stripes that come apart. It's faded, it's dirty. What are you trying to prove by flying that? And I think that, publicizing that there is a correct and proper way to dispose of them is a great idea. Another topic that I immediately thought of when I first saw your project come up would be in some wise, having a bulk flag purchase where we could take orders from townspeople and try to get, if we can get 500 flag orders, it's probably cheaper than buying them one at a time. Because I do like seeing flags up. I just want them to be in good condition. Okay, select board, Jeff.
We have a reserve fund for purchasing flags. How would this be maintained? I'm assuming, maybe it's not a fair assumption to assume that you're not going to live in Richmond forever. And you will grow out of that uniform at some point. So how will it be maintained going forward?
And who?
So I know you guys have a troop here, and I could reach out to them and make a permanent arrangement with them, but I can also do that with 692 and have in future years youth from Williston come and get them to be retired. So it could be either one of those things. I was thinking I would reach out to you guys' troop first, but I can make a permanent arrangement with one of those units. So you guys never have to worry about it.
But that troop would also maintain it and make sure it's
Correct.
secured. Okay. Good.
Yeah, so similar to what we do in the town of Williston right now. So I'm the scoutmaster of Williston's troop, but I reside in Richmond here. And in Williston right now, what we do with that deposit box is the troop meets at the armory. It's right next door. Quite often, once a month, we'll just stop in and we'll check on the box, and we store them at our troop shed for a proper ceremony. We do the same thing here.
It may be a little bit less convenient here because it's not where you meet. So somebody will have to, figure out a schedule for checking it and physically maintaining whatever, whatever it turns out to be.
I live within spitting distance of the town center.
Okay. That's a valid point to raise, but I still think in general, it's a worthy project to take back to the Troops Committee for approval.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
No argument against it.
personally, before we sign off on it, I would kind of like to see a little bit more detail, like what is it, where will it be, and how big is it? I don't know. So, personally, I would like to have a few more details before, saying, yeah, just go do something that has to do with the box and flag.
Yeah, like every flag that we have has either a pole attached to it or a stick or something. We don't have any flagpole. I mean, we're plenty of flags with no flagpole. So if you have to pull the stick off first, then that's something people need to know before you stick it in the box.
Yeah, so the way the process works for the scouts, we need your initial approval so that Michael here is not spinning his wheels on a project that you wouldn't accept. He'll put further detail into the project. He needs to work on dimensions, if there's a scout color scheme that you would prefer, all those details, right? He needs the initial go ahead from you guys, and then he can provide at a later date to be determined the specifications of the project, and then provide that to you before he goes any further. He's got to take it to the adult committee with the troop, and they have to bless off on it too.
Good points.
Maybe there's a preliminary approval with a requirement in the motion to come back for final approval with design and location.
That sounds right. Would anybody like to go ahead and make that motion, and then we can conclude if that's what it need be?
Sure, I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the suggestion or the offer of the scout troop to provide a used flag receptacle for disposal, and that they present to us at some future date a design, a location, estimated size, and go from there.
This is David. I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion from Lisa Miller, seconded by David Sander, to accept the idea of, if I mispronounce this in any significant way, John can fix it. To accept the proposal of a flag deposit box subject to agreement of location, maintenance schedule, materials, appearance, etc. Any further discussion? Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Bard, aye. David, aye.
Jeff, I. Lisa, I.
And Jay, aye. Okay. The next item does not require a vote. The next item is a review of the town of Richmond's remote work practice. And I think this would be best done by just saying, Josh.
Sure.
There you go.
So yeah, this came up at last meeting as far as sort of what we've been doing with.
Josh, I'm sorry, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
I'm about to head out. Do you guys have any CJC questions for me before I leave?
Oh, do you want to move that first?
Sure, we could go, let's swap that,
Sure.
or at least bring that up. So for those watching at home, we do have an item on the agenda, a request from the town of Williston for the Community Justice Center. The Community Justice Center, there's a number of them around the state. We are in the service area of the Williston one, and they do, diversion from the normal criminal process of various issues and work with mediation and so forth. They do a lot of good services, but they do require funding. And so in the memo, in the packet, is a memo asking us to bear some of it. And so Josh, could you go into a little more detail about that?
Sure. Let me pull them up so we get the numbers correct.
These two.
Oh,
Yeah, you can take all of them.
okay. So the Williston Community Justice Center is currently funded in large part by a grant from the Department of Corrections. It's housed in the police office in Williston, but Richmond and Hinesburg also send cases to the Community Justice Center, and certain ones of these are sort of mandated by the district attorney as far as certain crimes go there before they even go to a different prosecutor. So we certainly get services from the Community Justice Center. There's in the packet a list of all the other services that they provide as well. But currently the full amount to fund it is about $195,000. There's a grant award for part of that, but it leaves about $72,000 in operating revenue that's required for the program. That's currently being funded by the town of Williston and has been for the last, I'm not sure how many years, but good number of years. And Richmond and other areas haven't pitched in at all, or nor have we've been asked to. But now Williston is asking if Richmond, and I believe they're reaching out to Hinesburg as well, would contribute. I'm going to share my screen just to show some of the numbers that the town manager from Williston shared. So right now, there's really not great data as far as usage, where the cases come from or they originate from. Could we talked about what's the proper way to divvy this up, and one thought is based on usage. They haven't been tracking that to a degree of detail that would be helpful for this discussion. So then we sort of went to population, which is how we divvy up the funding for the community outreach program through the Howard Center is based on population. So town manager in Williston drew up a couple of scenarios here. Population of the 2020 census for between Williston, Richmond, and Hinesburg. He did a cost share based on $72,000 for the total operating costs. But he also did another one at $100,000 because Williston does contribute about $28,000 in kind for space and supplies and overhead. So he's looking for some initial feedback from the select board to understand where you would kind of see this sifting out, or if there's another way you'd like to figure out the cost share and what you might consider for the budget so that we can include it in our budget if appropriate, and Williston can count on that as well, or start to budget for that.
I would say that I think this is something that we should bear a fair share of. I also think we need to continue to do what we can to reform our cases there, because if we're going to pay for it, we should use it. And I do think that there are things that could be best handled by non-criminal diversion. The answer to everything is not throw them in jail. And you know, as you can see here, the numbers could be as little, and it could be less than 15,840, or it could be more than 22,000. But since we're trying to get a draft budget together, we need some guidance. So, select board, what do you think about all this?
Is there anything that we're currently budgeting for that would lay on top of this or be part of this?
I don't think we have it, and it wasn't in the charitable.
No,
Right.
it's not.
Didn't recall anything.
And we haven't done it in the past. I haven't asked in the past.
Correct.
Okay.
I think it might be premature to pick a number. It seems to me this is a conversation we should be having with Hinesburg.
Yeah.
You know, you know, we need to be comparable in some way, whether it's per capita or whatever. You know, I would put that in that, you know, category of that meeting with the you know, our subcommittee. I agree with Jay completely that I think we should be paying our fair share of this, and it's a really valuable service. How we interact with Hinesburg matters, so.
Right.
That makes sense to me. One technical aspect, we might, I see it's using 2020 census data. And if we stick with the decennial census, it'll be 10 years or another 6 years before it's updated, maybe 7 or 8. And I think there are some interim estimates from the Department of Health or the Census Bureau by town. So that's my only point. I don't think it's changes substantially.
I think our population 20 years ago was 20 people more than we have now.
But Hinesburg's grown quite a bit.
It's very small in Richmond.
I think it's one of the things that we just want to pay attention to, as opposed to stick with 2020 forever. The best available data, I think, is probably no longer 2020. So that's the only thing. I think it is a conversation, including the basis for the population.
They may have had more growth than we have.
They have
more available land for that. So.
Okay, we have a comment from the chat. From Bonnie Sawyer. Let me see if I'm overlooking the others. Can we use some money from the 2023 budget for policing services, given that we seem to not need the large budget recently allotted? Smaller police force shared chief services. Yeah, absolutely. What we keep calling vacancy savings because of police officers we didn't have to pay. That money is out there for us to use, and we could be funding a contribution out of that unspent money.
And that's a much more appropriate use than, you know, paying for
all those roller skates.
Windows or something. Yeah, roller skates. There you go. Yeah.
But I think that we need to do whatever we can to support our interaction with the Community Justice Center, because, as I keep harping, the criminal process is not the appropriate place for every offense.
Yeah.
And just a reminder that we had started talking about this in our budget discussions, and how much to pay for it and where does it go.
Yeah.
So
Anthony had his hand up. Anthony, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was optional to use the CJC. And the way the system is set up now, and I agree with it, is we can't operate, neither police department, even if Richmond was independent of Hinesburg or Hinesburg independent of Richmond, we cannot operate without restorative justice. I think they're doing a great job, but the way it's set up with Sarah George, and we have certain cases that are in our MOU that have to go to the CJC first. At one point it was, should we send it or should we not? At this point, because of the relationship that we're maintaining, a very good relationship between the CJC, the state's attorney, and the police departments, we just have to continue that. So the other thing I was going to say is that the last 6 months, the combined caseload for Richmond and Hinesburg exceeded that of Williston. So we really are using them quite a bit. And it's not just the services that you would think as far as going through the restorative process. It's also a number of things that they've helped us with for both Richmond and Hinesburg, including the houselessness, just the list goes on and on. So it really, really is something that we need.
Okay, so there's no motion to be made or vote. It's just some stuff that you want to think about, especially as we're going through the budget process. We're waiting on some information. Art?
I just think, that's what we ought to do, perhaps, is say the next steps is to contemplate this in the budget discussion and to have a conversation with the Community Justice Center folks or the Williston town manager about what the funding formula is going to look like, and make sure we sort of collaborate with Hinesburg in our approach to that.
One thought I had is that, we talked about the section in our budget that's contracted services, Howard Center, well, CJC could fit in this somehow. There is some awkwardness to have it in the police department section.
That's a good point.
In that you want, I would want the director of CJC to be able to speak freely to us without being dependent on the approval of the police chief. So, I don't know whether that is a conflict or not, but I think it's something to think about where it lives in our budget, is having some independence from that might be an advantage. We might not
We've
always-
actually, we've talked about that in Hinesburg. There is a fair amount of cases that are getting generated now that the general public has gotten more familiar with the CJC. They're getting generated without the police department, which is a good thing. Also, cases coming from the schools are being referred directly to the CJC. It's a thing that they used to handle a lot of that stuff in-house, and now they are. And I had spoke with our town manager about the potential of setting up a separate from the police department budget line item to include Cousy, the Howard Center, and the CJC, and
What I was thinking.
so that it's not under that police umbrella. I think Jeff's right.
Well,
Can I just want to ask Jeff, I want to make sure I'm understanding. Can you expand a bit more on what you think we need from Hinesburg? I see where you're going, like, as we combine services, maybe we need to figure out how we share the cost or something like this. But if we're looking at, let's assume we're looking at population, like that's going to kind of remain the same, whether we're combined or not.
We had two different options, right? One was for 15 and one was for 22. If we say 15 and they say
Oh, I see what you're
22,
saying. Okay.
then that's
Which, so which number are we splitting up to 72 or the 100?
about, and
Okay.
or something along that line.
Okay. Thank you. That's more clear. I wasn't sure. Okay.
Or vice versa. If they go 22 and we go 15, that wouldn't be.
Totally. Okay.
okay, well, Anthony, I think that wraps up what we need from you. Thank you so much for hanging around. Okay, we're gonna flip back to item I now, which is review of remote work practice. This was asked about at the last meeting. To what extent are our town employees allowed to work from home, and what are we doing to make sure that's secure and so forth? So as I started to do earlier, I'm going to ask Josh to kind of give us an overview.
Okay, so I think maybe a bit of a sort of history. Obviously, when COVID hit in 2020, we were pretty mandated to social distance, and certain businesses were mandated to shut down essentially because you couldn't be around each other. So we tried to adjust as much as we could to do some more remote work, spread people out in the office. So we acted fairly quickly to install LogMeIn, which we went through with our with Tech Group, who was our IT consultant at the time, and verified with the LCT that that was a secure way to conduct remote work, and we could do that. So at that point, I think more of the town staff was doing remote work. Obviously, there's some positions like highway that really can't do remote work, although I know Pete maybe does some invoicing and things at home occasionally, but obviously they have to be on site for certain of that work. As we've returned to the office over the last number of years, we have kept the ability to do some remote work, and it does still make sense for some staff. The department that takes advantage of it the most right now is planning and zoning. They've got some work where they need to be here to interact with residents, to talk about permits and discuss issues that residents might have, but there's also a lot of work that each of those have where they're writing reports, preparing for meetings, and they can actually be fairly productive working from home. So what I've asked each of them to do is make sure that there's at least one of them scheduled at all times in the office. So if someone comes in looking for a permit, if Tyler's not here as a zoning administrative officer, Keith can talk with them and get them the permit that they need, so that there's never really a delay in anybody getting something because somebody's working remotely. If they're taking any anything home, they're making copies of those things before they go home. So they're certainly not taking anything from their records home. They make a copy of that. And even if they're taking home documents for a upcoming DRB meeting or for a planning commission meeting, they're making copies, leaving the originals here. So those copies go home and they can mark them up and do what they need to with that. Finance Director Connie Bona does have ability to work remotely. She does it sometimes if she has trainings, or like this evening when she was joining remotely for a meeting. She doesn't do too much remote. I'll work remote occasionally, like if my kids are home and I have to be home, I'll log in from home and do some work there. But I really prefer to be in the office. Most times I'm more productive in the office than I am at home. Some people are the opposite. It's just the way it works. I think that we can kind of tighten up and address a few things moving forward. And I'm kind of glad we had this discussion to kind of refocus and say, okay, what other steps do we need to take to make sure that we're following best practices? One thing that's currently underway is we're switching from LogMeIn to VPN, which, although LogMeIn was approved by Tech Group and VLCT, a virtual private network is actually a little bit better step with dual factor identification. That's coming about partly in our upgrade to from Gmail to Outlook. We're doing two-factor identification and switching from the server and the firewall. Yes, Jay.
So the use, I'm extremely familiar with VPN.
Yeah, I'm sure you are more than I am.
VPN basically means, okay, this laptop, I could be anywhere on the planet and basically be on my corporate network, but I have to authenticate with a safe and secure system. And on my phone, you would not believe the number of security tools, because no one uses, no one security tool is used by everybody. But LogMeIn is more like a remote desktop where you're sitting on computer A and you're logging in and viewing what's on computer B.
Yep, and you have to have your computer at the office to remote in, so you have to have a desktop to get in. Whereas a VPN, this is my only computer. I can take it home and VPN in directly to the server, and like Jay said, it's much more secure. So
If he was working at home just on a given day and the power went out the town center, he's dead no rival. If he's using VPN, he's not dependent on what's here at the town center.
So we're moving towards that to get everybody set up on that. It's a bit of a process, as you might imagine, to get set up, but we're getting there. I think they probably need to get cell phones for Keith and Tyler. I think they do enough work where they, even if they weren't at home, I think there's enough volume that they have coming through to them that having a work cell phone, I think would be very helpful for them. I think a policy to formalize our rules from working from home, because as I said, it sort of evolved from a quick, we got to do this, to then it like, okay, it's working, but we should institute some best practices, make sure we're formalizing that in a policy. VLCT also has some good guidance that we should look at. They go into other things as far as ergonomically correct workstations at home, which is an important thing to make sure that for the health and safety of everybody. So that's sort of some things that are in process, and I think some best next steps that we need to take.
When we speak of best practices, I deal with protected health information up for millions of people. I have to be incredibly careful about leaving. When I stand up from my laptop, I have to lock it, even if it's just my wife at home. Control Shift Enter, it's locked. But I also cannot leave papers lying around that has any kind of PHI on it. And kind of the same applies when you're talking about town financial records or personal records or tax records. Josh in principle can't just have a heap of papers on his desk at home, stand up and say, it's 5 o'clock, it's Friday, I'm done for the day, and leave all that out. There needs to be some physical security of what you've taken home. So that's the kind of thing we say remote work and best practices that needs to be written out, because people won't necessarily realize that they have to be good custodians of work data.
Yeah, when you're so familiar with something, it's difficult to remember your edges.
One of the benefits of scale of state government is they have enough employees to justify doing this. They have something called the Learning Management System, or LMS. And some of the stuff you have to do every year, like, confidentiality and security, and they have like layouts, and then you have to identify all the breaches of security. So it's both a training and, to your point earlier today, kind of a test at the same time. So that is something to pay attention to, not only the technical security, but the human side of security about the laptops and papers and stuff.
Right. There's a funny story that I'm always amused by. A particular IT admin challenged a friend of his who was very good at testing corporate security. We've got our firewall so set up so tight, there's no way you'll be able to hack into our system. So what the guy he challenged did was he just got a jumpsuit out of the closet, grabbed a random badge, put it on his chest, walked right past the receptionist, picked up the server and left with it.
Ooh, point made.
That's, that's real stuff. And that's why you have to be very careful with this stuff. But if the server is secure, you may have the box. And if you can't get it back, well, the data is backed up to the cloud.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point of two-factor authentication, so forth, that if they don't have the two-factor device, they may have your computer, but it might as well be a brick because they're not getting into your data. Okay. Any questions about remote work?
Seemed like you would be a good resource for Dallas when it comes up with this.
Well, I was actually on the state of Vermont cybersecurity grant committee until I started pulling back and saying I've overcommitted back this summer when I was melting down. But yeah, I have to take a ridiculous amount of training every year, not just security of the type that you mentioned and so forth, but because my company is a HIPAA, because of HIPAA, I have to take an enormous amount of training, and it's the same stuff every year. So it's just like click, 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 but I still have to do it. Okay, moving on. We have an item, consideration of approval of a contract for preliminary engineering services for the east side of the Bridge Street Sidewalk project, Jelena Court to Esplanade. Want to take that?
Sure. So this is for the sidewalk that is sort of on the southern section of Bridge Street. And this is one that is funded by the Transportation Alternatives Program grant through VTrans. So the process so far has been, we've hired Cy Poly from CCRPC as our project manager. And then the next step was to hire an engineer. So we went through the VTrans at the ready process, which essentially I think they've got 6 or 8 different engineers that they've pre-qualified. They're on their website. Cy looked at those and he recommended 4 of them that he thought would be a potential fit. So we formed a committee of Cy, myself, planner Keith Oborn, Kathleen Gent, as well from the Transportation Committee. She and Chris both have been very helpful in this entire process. Chris wasn't able to participate in the selection committee, but he's been helpful providing input. So we all independently reviewed at the ready proposals that each engineer had. We have a scoring mechanism that you go through. We all submitted those. We reviewed this side. We settled on VHB as the best fit. Honestly, as you can imagine, all the engineering firms that submit to VTrans are very well qualified, but we felt that VHB had some sort of kind of local knowledge and addressed some things specific to our project and kind of what we want to see in their proposal. So we went back to them with the approval of VTrans, that we followed the correct process to get a contract from them to move forward. They came in at $63,544, which is below the budget of $69,500, which is what we have in the grant budget. Well, I did want to make sure that we addressed, obviously there's been a lot of concern about the cemetery and making sure that we're doing any sort of like sonar imaging or anything like that to make sure that there aren't any bodies under the sidewalk. They did point to the preliminary scoping that discussed that and said that in the preliminary scoping, they observed that the cemetery was at a higher elevation than the road. But I still wanted to make sure we had that discussion because 100 years ago, we don't really know where all that was. So in the kickoff meeting, we're going to discuss that, but I really want to make sure that that might be an additional cost, but I think it's probably worth a few extra $1,000 to make sure that we're sure about where we're digging. I did talk with Jeff a bit about this morning. I did reach out to Pete as far as how far down do you dig. He thinks because it's on a slant, you usually need about 8, if you're on a flat surface, you need about 18 inches down to kind of rebuild the bed for a sidewalk. Because it's slanted in, you're probably going to have like 3 feet or so of excavation on the deeper part to 18 inches out by the road. So not tremendously deep, but still deep enough. We want to make sure we know kind of where we're going. At that kickoff meeting, Jeff had brought up the trees as well. The other things like that could be discussed in the kickoff meeting to make sure we're not damaging and moving trees. And then as we get around this building, there's already a sidewalk that's set back quite a bit from the road. So as we get through the final design, we'll have to make a determination of where are we at with site work for this building? Where do we see that sidewalk going? Do we keep it in that spot? Do we have two sidewalks? That would seem a bit redundant. But there's things like this that will be addressed as we move forward in final design with VHB.
That topography has changed significantly over just the last 100 years. There weren't hard boundaries. The Bridge Street wasn't paved, the sidewalk wasn't formal. It was literally the path where the horses walked and the people walked. Then, as you know, 1927 flood.
Yep.
There was a lot of erosion and deposit all down Bridge Street. So where everything is clearly defined now isn't where things were defined even 75 years ago. So I would feel better about underground exploration before anything is touched.
Right.
It is rumored that when the Creamery parcel was developed and the whatever it's called was done, graves were disturbed.
That's what Linda says at least.
So
Yeah, I'd rather do it as well, be safe.
Right. And who knows, we might find some pirate gold.
Well, I'd note that the fence that went in, which looks great, by the way, I think the fence looks great.
Yeah.
My guess is it probably went down, 2 or 3 feet, the post for that fence, so, I think this is definitely worth investigating.
yes, definitely.
I think, I think it'll probably be okay, but, it's important to investigate.
It's a terrible look if we're turning them phones.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, there's a motion at the bottom.
Question for Josh. Josh, will the scope of work that's just for the investigation, right? The layout, the engineering, no actual dirt turning or anything?
Correct. Yeah, this is the final design. And then once we have the final design, there'll be another round to go out to bid for construction.
Okay.
I
I assume they'd make an inventory of interesting things they find by radar or whatever, and to be determined.
Yeah, I think if we do, once we do whatever sort of imaging they can, they'll have that in the report. And
Right.
if there's a major issue, we'll probably have to sort of stop and figure out what are we going to do if they find something in there that can't be moved.
There are some regulations about if we find any kind of archaeological stuff. I mean, not like recent bodies, but
Yeah.
if we find
Artifacts.
Abenaki artifacts.
Yeah, that part of this is, an environmental and archaeological review that they do. They note that because it's already a disturbed area and has been for decades with the street here, it's been excavated, there's water lines, there's sewer lines, there's, I think there's gas. There's been a lot of things going. So usually in an area like that, your archaeological study is fairly clean, fairly easy because it's already been disturbed so much, but you never know what you're going to find. Like David said, things have shifted over the years and some spot haven't maybe been.
Right.
They do all the proper studies to make sure that we're not going to run aground of anything.
I move to approve an agreement with VHB for preliminary engineering services for the east side of Bridge Street sidewalk project, Jolena Court to Esplanade, in the amount of $63,544, and to appoint Town Manager Josh Arneson as the duly authorized representative.
This is David. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford to approve an agreement with VHB Engineering for preliminary engineering services for the Center Bridge Street Sidewalk Project, Jelena Court to Esplanade, in the amount of $63,544, and to appoint Town Manager Josh Arneson as a duly authorized representative. Please state your name and your vote.
Bart, aye. David, aye.
Jeff, aye.
Lisa, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay. We have done the funding request from the town of Wilson for the CJC. And so we're going to move to item L. I'm going to give item 3L.
This is the 250.
Act 250, yeah.
No, it's not Act 250.
I'm not Act 250, the 250th anniversary. So you want to pull it up or?
Yeah, I'll pull it up because it is a bit of a, well, here, there's the resolution. Do you want the initial letter?
What do you call that?
The initial, this thing.
Yeah. You want the
3L1.
Yep, I'm getting there. Yeah.
Centennial.
Oh, yeah, I had to figure that out. I took 3 years of Latin.
Okay, so, this is a letter from Laura Trishman, Vermont State Historic Preservation Officer within the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development. Noting that the 250th anniversary of the founding of Vermont is coming up in 2027. And there's obviously going to be celebrations and fireworks and all kinds of things. And we are asked to issue a resolution in commemoration of the anniversary. And the celebrations will commence in 2025 and extend through 2027. Participation could be something as simple as liaison sharing, establishing the local committee, organizing events and activities, time travel to see the original, founding, what have you. So that's kind of what they're asking us to do, just to pass a resolution and show interest. And then document 3L2 is a draft resolution to that effect. This resolution it is basically ready for us to just move and adopt if we wish to. It's covering Vermont, Governor Phil Scott, signed an executive order to create this committee and to come up with stuff to celebrate. The 250th anniversary committee hopes to engage all 252. Note, because of those people in Essex Junction, it's no longer 251. Yeah, but the 251 Club has not changed its name. It's like
Good for them.
So they're asking all towns and cities, although I don't think they're going to have a lot of luck with Avery's Gore, Warner Grant, and Warren Gore because nobody lives there. Anyway, they hope to involve all towns and cities with this project. We are, by passing this resolution, hoping to inspire Vermonters to learn from their history, et cetera, to build stronger communities for the future. And then the resolve, this is the actual action, to officially establish a liaison or local committee made up of a diverse group of citizens or individuals to work with the committee, the commission, their voluntary roles, and there will be no compensation for participation. There's an optional clause which we would need to discuss. Resolve that the town of Richmond provides funding for planning or implementation of 250th related commemoration. And resolve that we would send a copy of this to the 250th anniversary commission. So that is what we are going to discuss. If we want to make any changes, if we want to include the optional clause, the floor is open.
I just want to say, mention a historical note. Vermont was the 14th state following the independence from Great Britain. Vermont wasn't really sure about what this new thing was. So Vermont held out until 1791. Vermont was an independent republic. Not many people know this, but one of the conditions on Vermont joining the Union was we had an escape clause after 200 years. So Vermont actually voted in
1991.
Thank you, 1991, to continue to be a member of the United States. It was.
Can we do that again?
Depending on how the election goes next year.
No,
Province might be.
one of our founding fathers, Stephen Allen, who was frankly kind of a jerk if you read and all kinds of problems. He did not feel that Vermont and his Green Mountain Boys were getting sufficient respect from the rest of the colonies, and he was having discussions on the QT about joining Canada.
And the Republic of Vermont had strong allegiance with New York and also had strong allegiance with New Hampshire, and the allegiance vacillated back and forth. So,
with both sides issuing competing land grants.
Yeah, the only problem with this resolution too is it's a pretty big slap in the face to all the indigenous people.
there is that.
Yeah, whose land it really was.
No, you're absolutely right.
So, I mean,
So that would be
we knew
something, to your point, Lisa, there's nothing stopping us from adding a whereas.
Exactly.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
And
I
if
don't know
you'd
what
like
I should
some time to
say.
draft a whereas, we could obviously come back in 2 weeks and vote to include that.
Given the significance of what we're celebrating
Well,
in 3 days.
I think
for
just
the
the,
natives
not even just a
offered.
lip service, just the out and out admission that, you know, we're sitting on land that for a few thousand years before was.
I think that's a really interesting point.
And, yeah, I mean, this, if I were indigenous, I think I'd be offended that,
Yeah.
this land they took from us, look, they're thumping their chests about how long we had it.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know.
So do we want to table this for the moment and?
We have time.
Yeah.
Think about
Yeah,
it.
I think we should table this and we can be thinking about additional whereas or ways to rewrite this. Because they're not holding their gun to our head and saying it has to be this form.
Mhm.
They're saying we're gonna have an anniversary, an observation of the founding, the legal founding of the state of the Republic of Vermont.
Yeah, that's
No,
a political entity, and that's fine, I think.
Independence from Great Britain.
And Vince Great Britain.
Vermont was an independent republic after that.
And I don't like to muck things up, but there's no way anything is gonna change in history, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Can't change the history, but we can.
Well,
work
unless
together with the
unless
tragedies.
again, we work out that whole time machine thing.
Hmm.
So that's
afraid of that
part
day.
of that.
I was just thinking, I think, I like the idea of adding a whereas and just to maybe assign responsibility. I don't know if Lisa, you want to do it or consult with Richmond Racial Equity. I think it's adding a
I think
sentence.
that's, yeah, whereas, I mean, just an admission of the obvious, essentially, whatever to say. I don't
Somebody
know.
needs to come up with that language.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would be good. I mean, they're gonna
Okay,
want to
so
rewrite the
Are
whole
you willing
thing,
to
of
take
course.
the lead on that? To at least come up with a
Sure.
draft?
Sure,
Okay.
how long we got?
As long as you need, I think.
You know, if you haven't
So-
done it in the next.
This is not an emergency, going back to an earlier discussion.
Yeah.
No, I guess we should
We'll
also
drive it
ask, based on the thing of an emergency, do any of us have a conflict of interest in this? And should we refuse our?
I think we all have a conflict of interest and
I don't think I have any native blood, so, you know, I don't have
Okay.
that problem.
So, we will simply not, take a vote on this tonight and just, but do we need to move the table or just?
Yeah, I think
I don't
skip
think-
it and we'll bring it back whenever Lisa's
Okay.
ready.
Okay, then that brings us to our last official agenda item. It was pointed out to us that after moving our first meeting in January off of New Year's Day, well, we should also move our second because it would fall on Martin Luther King Day. And so the proposal would simply be to move the January 16th meeting, January 15th meeting.
To January
to January
16th,
16th.
2024.
Yes,
I move-
2024.
Whoever read, I,
change the date for the second select board meeting in January to Tuesday, January 16th, 2023.
yeah, sorry.
And in recognition of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, on the board's regularly scheduled meeting date of Monday, January 15th, 2024.
Yay.
This is David. I'll second.
Okay, so Jeff's made a motion to change the date for the second select board meeting one day out to avoid it falling on Martin Luther King Day. And we would meet instead on Tuesday, January 16th, in recognition of Martin Luther King Day, which falls on the regularly scheduled meeting date of Monday, January 15th. And that was seconded by David Sander. Any further discussion? Okay, please pick your name and your vote.
Bart, aye.
David, I.
Jeff, aye. Lisa, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, that brings us to approval of minutes for purchase orders. We do have several purchase orders, but we can also start with the minutes if you like. We would need to approve the minutes of the November 6th meeting, but also the minutes of the budget meeting on November 13th.
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the draft minutes of the November 6th regular meeting of the Richmond Selectboard.
Does Bart will second that?
A motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill to approve the minutes of November 6th, 2023. Seeing no discussion. Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Bart, aye.
David, I.
Jeff, aye. Lisa, aye. And Jay, aye.
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the draft minutes from the November 13th budget meeting of the Richmond Select Board.
Does Bart, I will second that.
A motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill to approve the minutes of the November 13th budget meeting of the Select Board. Please state your name and your vote.
Bart, aye.
David, I.
Jeff, aye.
Lisa, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, before going to the purchase orders, are there any questions about any items in the warrants?
I have a couple.
Okay,
One is, Anthony bought a whole bunch of stuff, which I was really pleased about for the police department, but on some of them, he was charged sales tax. Does he have the, sales tax certificate?
good catch.
I'll follow up with him. Oh,
So
why?
I
Just
see
do
it on
what-
JB Tools.
Okay,
There was also Palmetto State Armory.
Josh, did he use our credit card or?
It looked like he did.
yeah, I know for some items he's been using credit card when
Is
there's
it,
really not another way to pay.
yeah, but I
Um,
mean, that should be tax exempt.
Yeah.
Should be,
You
yeah.
know, it's not much, but it's just.
But
Oh, no,
still,
no.
no, we should make sure that he's not doing that.
Yeah.
Usually if it's an invoice that comes in directly, Connie will she's usually really good about, nope, we're not paying that, and then we reduce the check.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's probably credit card.
I think it is FNB. Yeah, I think it's credit card.
Okay.
FNBO, you know, I think that's our credit card.
Let me see.
The other question I have is, do we have a policy on, travel per diem? Or do we just pay whatever?
Right, we don't have a policy, and I think we should institute one.
You know, in any government work that I've done,
Mhm.
you know, there's a federal per diem
Yeah.
rates
Mhm.
for both lodging and meals.
Yeah, so you're probably looking at the training and, right, and the lodging on that, so that was a training that for whatever reason they held in like a resort town in New Hampshire. And the hotel they contracted with to invite a bunch of municipal workers to was a fairly high-end hotel. And Tyler did look around to see are there any other places nearby, and everything was in the same rate area. And I know other municipalities like the town manager in Jericho and their planning director went to the same conference and had the same issue. So I don't know if there was much we could do about the lodging. Looking at the meals, I think we could have done better on the meals. But the lodging with this particular one, we did try to find a way around it. It wasn't readily apparent.
You know, my experience is with per diem rates, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. You know, you have a hot dog and you win, you know.
Yes.
But I don't know whether we should have a policy or not.
I think we should have a limit because, especially on the food. I mean, in the hotel, I get like he tried, they looked, Connie looked, there was nothing else. But on dinner, it's like, you could probably do better than that. So I agree. We can work on that too.
With those comments, I would move to approve the warrants.
Let's do purchase orders first.
Also, and this is a private company I'm about to reference, my employer, definitely has a policy on whether to pay for alcoholic drinks as part of the meal.
Yeah.
For RMB, we have $63.53 for drinks and a taco.
Ooh.
So that's either a very expensive taco or several drinks. I'm not saying we shouldn't, since we didn't tell them not to.
Well, I told them, I've always said no alcohol.
Yeah.
And I believe that, let me pull up the
Invoice.
let me pull up the invoice. I gotta find it here. So that was,
It's not that drinking is bad, but
no, we shouldn't pay
not
for
a
it.
good look when
No,
the town's paying for Mai Tais and.
Yeah.
Exactly.
no, we
Unless
don't.
they're good Mai Tai.
Yeah, I mean, people
Well-
can buy them on their own. We wouldn't know.
Right.
That's fine.
So was it RMB you said?
RMNB.
Okay,
Should be right after a whole bunch of Richmond Home Supply and right before Secure Shred.
okay, good. And scrolling through these invoices is always a joy.
Here we go. It is page 102 of the invoices document.
Thank you, that's super helpful. Hi.
Oh, actually, I know what this is. This is for employee appreciation event, and this is
Oh.
paying
That is in,
AGS Vermont for the photos.
yes,
Oh,
so that's, because
That would have to be okay.
yeah, so that's Duncan went and got a bunch of sodas and seltzers. So yes, that was,
Sorry, I thought it was, at first I was
No.
thinking this was like expensing meals at the conference.
no, this is, specifically the $60 for seltzers. So, okay,
What about the taco?
well, that was for taco night. So the tacos itself were for the taco truck.
Oh.
So I think it was a $63 charge
Yeah.
that we bought sodas for that because they didn't have beverages. And then it was like
Yeah.
$600 or $800
So,
for that. So yeah, so that's different.
Okay.
Because I remember looking,
that went over really well, I think.
I think people liked it. Yeah, it was well done. So thank you all for the suggestion.
And for those of you who did not watch the presentation, I mean, we were present for it. The MMC TV, one of their interns did a really first-rate job of making it look great.
It
A
is.
certain Irish setter loved his screen time.
Yeah, I had one other question. Airlick is our pest control,
They are.
and we have an overdue balance.
So that's that's because they didn't complete their service a couple of times that they came here because they weren't able to get into the basement. And Duncan was saying, well, you only did part of your service. Let's reduce that price. So he was back and forth with them on the phone to reduce the price. They finally came through with the reduction. So we weren't paying until they did the reduction. So there's no fees associated with it, but we did have a bit of a backlog. But we got the price reduced based on the lack of service. So yes.
Okay. So we do not yet have a motion to accept.
Oh, so
Well, we should do POs first.
Oh, you
just-
want POs first?
Yeah, I think because some of the POs relate to items you're approving, so we should do that.
Let's work our way through the.
So Black River, I wanted to talk about because I didn't catch this until after I sort of sent everything to you guys that they were oddly over the amount of the $65,000. So I looked at it today because I'm like, wow, I thought they were staying within their budget. What it turns out it is there are certain reimbursable items. So they bid it at $65,000 for essentially staff time. And this is for like the architectural design that we talked about earlier today for the town center. So then there's reimbursables like photocopies, mileage, things like that. Prints. So that totaled out to about 800 or so far, and they've got a couple $100 left on the actual contract. But then also in there that we should add to this is we added on sort of a change order for the net zero inquiry that they did. So that was an additional $2,170 that they charged us for. I think the board approved like 3,500
Yeah.
plus 10,000 to for getting the engineering firm, but the structural engineer also, we paid them separately. So what I'm going to suggest on this is that we amend this by $3,170 to include up to $1,000 in incidentals. So the next couple invoices we get, that should be enough to cover the $2,170 for the additional net zero work. And that gets this PO to cover the full scope of work from Black River.
So that was a lot of numbers.
Sorry, so the amend PO number 4558, the Black River Design, to increase it by $3,170 for a new total of $68,170.
I just want to do something.
like just do so moved.
Yeah, we'll get the motion.
I'll second that. This is Bart.
Okay. So we're amending purchase order 4558 to Black River Design by a certain amount to cover the additional services.
Yep.
Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Bart, aye.
David,
Jeff, I
Lisa, I.
And Jane, aye.
will say that I think we resolved the issue with Radiate, and we don't need their services to do reiterations of different designs.
I think
Do
you're
I
right.
understand that correctly from
I think so.
tonight? So that's good.
It's really trying to do everything. we
Okay,
want
so
them to do.
next we have purchase order
Yeah, let me get you there, sorry.
4809 for Mount Mansfield Unified School District. It's a third big chunk of change. It's 1.895,626,000,022. Is that 22 cents now? That's right.
It is.
I didn't know why it was in superscript like that, but okay. So, I don't think we should pay. Okay, no, seriously, any questions about this?
I'll move purchase order, what number?
4809.
4809 for to the MMUU School District in the for our second quarter education taxes in the amount of $1,895,626.22.
Okay.
I will second that, but I think you said 5. It's 1,893,66.
5 up there and 3 down here.
Three, now it's just the way it's scribbled.
Yeah.
With that correction.
So what is it, 5 or 3?
$1,893,626.22.
Okay.
And Bart, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by Bart Hill. First order 4809, and then the USD. They are ordered to education taxes in the amount of $1,893,626.22.
Bart, aye.
David, Jeff,
Lisa, I.
Okay, our next item is purchase order 4832. For UVM Home Health and Hospice. It is as part of our charitable appropriations. It is $11,000. Any questions?
What part of UVM does that go to? It's a big organization.
It's
Home
health and hospital. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like visiting nurses, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they
just
do
say-
come here and
It's just that UVM has swallowed up everything.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
well, they haven't taken
That should be in
over
that Vermont
yet.
Declaration. Gonna change the
Okay.
name of the state to UVM.
So, any other questions about the amount or anything like that? Okay, can I move to acceptance?
Sure, I'll move. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve purchase order number 4832 to UVM Home Health Network and Hospice, in the amount of $11,000.
This is Bart. I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Miller, seconded by Bart Hill, for purchase order 4832 to UVM Home Health and Hospice for $11,000. Please state your name and your vote.
Bart, I.
David, I.
Jeff, I.
Lisa, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, next, purchase order 4833 for 4 Smart Pro LLC and the amount of also $11,000 for cleanup after flood, the volunteers green restrooms and town center basement. Any questions?
Just a quick, I assume somebody has looked at the work and
Yeah, Duncan and I have inspected it.
I was hoping it's like one of the committees because they keep bitching about it. So
I don't know, they did a really,
Committee would have done well to go down there and.
they did a really good job, and we actually, under a separate order, we added painting of put up new drywall in the concession stand, so they painted that. Everything looks really good, and we're ready to roll.
And we, of course, got to personally inspect the basement on Saturday.
Yeah.
So no
Sorry, I
issues,
wasn't
they met
there.
all the
Still got-
commitments.
I'm sorry,
No issues, they met all the commitments.
so they did everything that we asked them to do, so they did a good job. So Jeff, thank you for recommending we stick with them, even though their bid was a little less complete than the other one. I think we got good service and good value.
So given that there was some hesitation about going with a small independent contractor, I think we should follow this up with a letter of recommendation.
I think that's a good idea, actually.
I
That is
agree.
a good, maybe another job.
Having said that, I will move to approve purchase order
4833.
4833 in the amount of $11,000.
To 4 Smart Pro LLC.
Sorry.
There you go.
This is Bart. I will second that.
And we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill, to approve purchase order 4833 in an amount of $11,000 to pay for cleanup after the flood of the restrooms in town center basement. Volunteers green restrooms in town center basement to 4 Smart Pro LLC.
Before going to a vote, I just want to say that I am proud that, you know, we had some reservations, but I am proud that we went with an independent company as opposed to a large contractor who has been collecting a lot of money off of this.
Yeah.
Please take your name and your vote.
Bart, I.
David, I.
Jeff, I.
Lisa, aye.
And Jay, aye. I believe our last purchase order,
Yeah,
which
all right. So take it over, thank you.
purchase order 4835 to Hinesburg Police Department for $33,770. This is police coverage for the month of October 2023.
The usual question, what do we have to show for it?
I move to approve purchase order number 4835 for the Hinesburg Police Department in the amount of $33,770.
This is David, I'll second.
Motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by David Sanders, to the purchase order 4835. Hinesburg Police Department for October 2023 coverage. $33,770. Please state your name and your vote.
Bart, I.
David, I.
Jeff, I.
Lisa, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, now we can do a motion to approve the warrants.
I move to approve the warrants as amended. Did we amend?
I don't think we.
No, there were no.
We didn't. As
So as
presented.
presented.
As intended.
This is David, I'll second.
A motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by David Sanders, to approve the warrants as presented. We've already discussed them. Please state your name and your vote.
Bart, I.
David, I.
Lisa, aye. Oops. Sorry. I stepped on you.
And Jay, aye. Okay. Items for next agenda. We already have a couple. The Recreation Committee has asked for time on that agenda to present to us. And we potentially may have a clause from Lisa for the 250th.
Yeah, they should be.
The semi-Quen
There you go, Joe.
I wonder if they should do it.
Centennial.
That should be the committee we assign.
Right. We potentially will be revisiting the ethics policy if Bradley gets us his suggested verbiage. And again, all of you are welcome to take a closer look. If you see any other suspect areas. You know, when you look at an ethics policy, you don't always see the whole that you can drive a truck through.
Exactly.
And I am concerned about that whole thing of we'll just say everything's an emergency.
Yeah.
Yeah, that needs to be spelled out.
Honestly, that was the hardest policy of all. It was. Most everything else is kind of, you know, you can see where it's going. That one, where's it coming from? That's the problem. So.
Anything else that people can think of at this? There may be a report back from the police negotiating committee. Or at least an update on that. And we may have an update from personnel in that we may be ready to we may be ready to officially offer a position to our candidate with the police department.
So I would have a request about the Eagle Scout thing is that I really appreciate that what they're doing and I know it's valuable for them to present to us. However, our meetings go kind of long, so like it'd be nice if they do any kind of presentation that we limit it to like 5 minutes. Would be good.
Yeah.
It's a box.
Anything else people can make? David, you want to have a resolution, you know, regarding subs or?
If anybody has any garage space they want to lease me this winter.
I just cleared out
We've
a
got the
corner of ours. I got about 40
You might
other
want to
cars.
considering, you know,
Okay.
narrowing down the amount of vehicles.
Okay. Does anybody feel a need for an executive session? Please say no.
No.
I believe we're ready for a motion to adjourn, only
Oh.
35 minutes. late.
I,
Okay, on motion from David Center, seconded by,
Lisa.
yeah.
okay, to adjourn, please take your name and your vote.
All right. David, I.
Lisa,
And Jay.
Here with Thompson Hartness.